Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
I don't get it. There's no Andreas here today. Who's sponsoring
Who did
the
that?
show?
Yeah, who's even like adding the videos and hitting the like button?
Yo, you don't know
Who
either?
is responsible for this?
How are we even doing this right now?
I
don't even know
refuse
how
to
this-
say another
man
word
behind
until
the
we get
thing.
an answer.
Is he gonna is he just curious? Is this a test? I feel like I'm part of
It's a
some like
test.
Stanford experiment right now.
This is a test. This is like that movie Cube.
Can I be the cop if we're doing Stanford? It seems like it went better for the cops.
With the Stanford
go better.
experiment.
Guards.
I
Yeah,
get to
wanna
be
a
all-time
guard.
cop. I get to be all-time cop.
Yeah.
I had a thing. I played Cool Hand Luke with that movie just for fun, and it was pretty good actually. It was pretty weird. There's a lot of
The movie recent one.
Yeah, the recent Stanford experiment movie. I was like, it just reminds me of Cool Hand Luke in so many ways. Like that one guy totally takes on that character, of like the main guy with the sunglasses,
Dude, I wish I would have known we were going to talk about this because there was recently like a TV show where they didn't realize they were redoing the Stanford prison experiment, but they were totally redoing it and had the exact same outcome. And then after the fact, someone was watching it and they were like, "Oh, you guys did this," and they were like, "What's that?" It's amazing how universal that sort of dynamic just erupts naturally in a system. Almost is that
Oh,
for humans too? Like dolphins.
Yeah, I
aren't
think
humans,
that
right?
wasn't that. If you entertain that the experiment really showed something about people's tendencies, then yeah. I mean, the difficulty is that you just have so many variables playing into it whenever you do a simulation like that. You know what I mean? Like, but they didn't have the same restrictions that they have now. Like that kind of stuff still goes on, I'm sure, but it can't go on through the mainstream channels like Stanford, like it did then. It's like the colleges were so complicit with so much of that MK Ultra stuff. It's just crazy.
I mean, aren't colleges kind of like, if you were to apply the Stanford prison experiment to the nation as a whole, wouldn't like academia kind of be the guards?
They would be one of the guards, one of the versions of the guards.
I mean,
sure.
any gatekeeper, right? Any
The
gatekeeper by definition would be. Well, I mean, it's basically the Lord of the Flies, right? The Lord of the Flies is just an exploration into that part of human nature.
Yeah,
We've
good example.
talked about this on the show before, the Lord of the Flies thing, because I was tripping out because Lord of the
that was a
Flies
bunch. That's what's
Lord of-
happening now. We're being tested by Andreas and seeing who eats who first.
Lord of the Flies was published the same year as Lord of the Rings, and from the same university, the two professors, and they have a common link who's somebody who's connected to Rudolf Steiner, like a student of Rudolf Steiner. And that was the only link I was able to find. I looked for a while, a couple years back or whatever that was. But yeah, no, Lord of the Rings and Lord of the Flies are like, you have microcosm and macrocosm. Like you have the same stuff going on in Lord of the Rings is going on in a much simpler version in Lord of the Flies. And so I have to wonder, because Lord of the Flies obviously is a reference to what's the name of that? Gurdjieff wrote the book on him. What Basil Bub? That's what Lord of the Flies. That's what Basil Bub means.
Which was I've heard that as an insult, like it was like Lord of the poo.
Yeah,
Lord of Flies, Lord of shit.
Well, shit is Lord of the Flies, I think is the idea, right?
Right.
So like Basil Bub is like a big pile of
flies,
shit.
Like flies and rats, which we have like a connotation of almost like they should be associated with Saturn, are actually associated with Jupiter.
Right.
Because access creates those things. So rot and decay creates flies, and rot and decay create mice, so to speak, and like an access of stuff. And Jupiter being the great beneficiary is, which is like, you know, a cornucopia.
Right. Well, how old is Basil?
See, who's doing this stuff? Who's doing it?
If we're gonna get into like rot and decay and creating things, this is almost like the alchemical blackening, especially when, like, if I was gonna cite like the homunculus, right? That's the whole point, where they would pulverize some animal and they would let it decay, because then you would see like the innards turn into maggots, and it was almost a concept of like out of death comes this new form of life.
Right, but that was, you know, but there's that series of experiments that was, what is that, the 1700s or something, where they like determined, like, because people thought that the maggots were literally like growing out of the meat, like, and they didn't put together, so they had to like keep one covered.
We're going to get, you know, we're going to get into Wilhelm Reich, right?
We're getting into flies laying eggs, you know, you can't get around. Are we getting into Wilhelm Reich through that channel? What are we talking about?
Yeah, because I mean, that's what his biomes experiment was kind of like formulating the same idea, because before, when they were thinking about the maggots coming out of like the dead tissue like that, that was like an idea of like spontaneous life, or life coming from nothing. Right. And that's basically what some of Reich's experiments imply, that the dead biomes will actually create organ and spawn life. And I mean, it's complicated and it's hard to explain, but if you do understand it, they're like, what the hell is going on?
See,
where is this guy?
In case no one saw the Apple WWWD, whatever the hell they call it, the big announcement was that they've actually integrated Andreas into Apple operating systems now.
Oh, so that's what it is.
Is he uploaded? Is this Transcendence with Johnny Depp? Is this just he's now become an operating system?
Yeah, he volunteered because Scarlett Johansson kind of snuffed OpenAI, and I think he weaseled his way in. He was like, "Not only can you use my voice, you can just have me."
She take all of me. So doesn't
all of me.
Doesn't a snuff film technically have to be kind of sexual in nature? Like, can you just be a snuff film as just somebody murdering somebody and go, "Oh, that's a snuff film"? I don't know. Somebody was trying to tell me.
Andreas would make a snuff film and make all of the faces his.
I feel like we shouldn't kink shame here. There's probably equal kinks, and like one person gets off just seeing the murder, and another person might need to see some actual activity leading up to the murder. And there's probably some that would like Code Blue, right? All I want to do is have fun with the dead.
Right. I'm sorry for going there. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, that sounds about true. So I don't. Is this? It really does feel like a test of sorts. I feel
like if you talk about the test, you're losing the test.
Oh, is that
like
right?
10 minutes in. And
I gotta play the game of. I have to play the game of not knowing.
You ever seen Hypercube?
Okay, I got this concept. Well, there's my issue right now is there's been like a whole bunch of things you guys have like hit on, and we're just like going past them quickly. They're just drifting by.
Okay, with that in mind, if we can rewind all the way back, we were talking about Lord of the Flies and Lord of the Rings, and I think there's
okay.
a lot more there.
I got a concept. I got something to talk about off of that because
I've
once
got a
I was
hot take
messing
that
around
doesn't
with
really-
AI and
I have a
syncs,
hot take that doesn't really warrant an in-depth discussion, but I just need to get it out of my system really quick.
Sure.
well, you guys understand the idea of like twin movies, right? Like
Yes.
two movies coming out at the same time that are
Yes.
about
And
the
two
same
books.
thing.
Yes. Yeah. Child's Play, Toy Story 4. Yeah. Same day and year. Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
But I
Crazy.
mean, you could probably name a bunch of them, right? Like,
Oh yeah. There's a ton. I'm huge in it.
I mean, I got AI too. AI, that was actually like what if we're talking about meta Easter eggs, give me some concepts that I could do on my YouTube channel. And it started talking about those. And then I started like asking it to go into the concepts of why that would even be. And then I had it name off a whole bunch of them. But to me, I think like the whole Lord of the Flies and the Lord of the Rings thing would fall inside of that, right? Like because I could not get the AI to admit that it was all because of marketing and because of like industry norms, that it wasn't like espionage, that you can't necessarily blame all of those twin movies on the fact that it's just competition.
I assume you're talking ChatGPT when you say AI.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I know you can't. I just thought it was interesting.
So
I mean,
racist. Everyone just thinks AI is just one thing.
Everyone just thinks it's ChatGPT.
I'm not here. Ignore me. I just really wanted to bring this up for a second because
what is this guy sick? Is this guy sick?
You guys were talking about you're talking about like social experiments, and well, this is not necessarily exclusively a university experiment. Let's be honest. Facebook is, in a lot of ways, and was to begin with, a university experiment, and it was targeting the youth. But in 2012, particularly, like the effort done by anthropologists involved with Facebook, I remember hearing about this through my cultural anthropology class and how much they were getting in trouble for it. But Facebook conducted a study for 1 week in 2012, testing the effects of manipulating news media based on emotions. The results have hit the media like a bomb. What did the study find? Was it ethical? And what could have been changed? Short answer is no, it wasn't super ethical. If you remember what Facebook was like from 2008 to 2012, even just right before 2016 election, you can see like the major shifts in how they encourage people to accumulate content, how to make content, right? So that you could always say, hey, there's all kinds of things on Facebook, and make you get the feeling that you're curating your own algorithm for a while there because you're able to pick your friends that you want to see their posts from. And at a certain point, they got to a level of saturation where they could actually choose exactly what kind of posts they wanted you to react a certain way with. Facebook in the first experiment reduced the positive content of newsfeed. Each positive post had about a 10% and a 90% chance based on their user ID of being omitted from the newsfeed for that specific viewing. In the second experiment, Facebook reduced negative content of newsfeed in the same manner. In both experiments, these treated conditions were compared with control conditions in which a similar portion of posts were randomly filtered out. Note that whatever negativity users were exposed to came from their own friends, not somehow from Facebook engineers. But, they were able to emotionally sort content to get reactions out of people. This seems kind of crazy.
I disagree with this. Is that so crazy?
What's that?
I don't know. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Like every time that there's some sort of trendy argument on Facebook that has to do with like whether the dress is white and black or blue and yellow or whatever, like I always wonder if it's just like them scraping information out of people.
Right. Well, you remember the whole like the chain of connections that existed in the founding of Facebook that connects to
LifeLog, right?
What was that, or that awareness organization that came out after 9/11 that was like connected to like Homeland Security that had like their logo was like the all-seeing eye and all that shit. It's like they do you know what I'm talking about? The information awareness.
Yeah.
And like that was totally like, and there was, what was the project that the FBI was working on that they dropped the day and year? Yeah, thank you. LifeLog.
Oh, look at that. Jesus, come on, man.
Yeah, DARPA right there. So like what Andreas was just pointing out, like that screams of DARPA shit to me.
I really wish it was like education, because then it could have been DERPA.
Derp.
Derp alert. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, well, you remember that Facebook had that like really dramatic shift that followed the Egyptian protests. So like they had that leader that all these people in Egypt wanted out, but the thing was, so he was connected with all this. He was connected with all this shadow government shit, and then it was like they used Facebook. The Egyptians used the Facebook app as a way. It hadn't been done quite like that before. And you know, I mean, I saw footage. I don't know what you guys saw, but I saw like dudes
I saw
on horses.
I saw the
with like
Facebook
the swords,
logo.
like swinging the swords. Like those protests, the Egyptian protests, those are some crazy protests. And then they took the guy out, and then they, as far as I can tell, they like installed somebody that was even crazier than him. But like, you know, that's how like Egypt had to kind of function that way. Like that's how it was set up. So it's like it's kind of it's a double-sided sword, because you're like, okay, well, this guy's really fucked up. We should remove him. But if you do that, the country is going to be destabilized. And so then it starts to feel like one of those classic CIA destabilized, you know, country.
Speaking of which,
you know?
what the fuck is going on down in Mexico right now?
Yeah, there's a lot going on down in Mexico. There's also something going on in Cuba. I don't know. If
Like
you're
37
warship
presidential candidates were killed in Mexico.
Well, 37 politicians.
No, it was politicians. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like the way that the headline read was that you were looking at these were all presidential candidates. They were, and like that. I'm sorry, like this isn't excusing it. Like it's crazy, but that is Mexico for you. Like this isn't like, I don't know how anomalous this really is. I'd have to talk to somebody who knows, but yeah.
First Jew to be in control of Mexico.
I mean, that again with like, okay. Hold on. I'm trying not to be part of this. But if you look at Mexico and you think about the history,
are we being tested?
It blows my mind that people think of Mexico as a Catholic country. No, there's like 6 Catholics left. The country has been since Maximilian run by Freemasons. That was what the 20th century was the Freemasonic era, right? And that's only after the 1840s when Maximilian kind of loses power. So they go from kind of a Franco-Masonic state to a Masonic state, right? And that connection to international power is tied to the United States, which is why President Vicente Fox, who was 6 cousins with George Bush and is connected. I mean, then you've got the Romney family. Like the families that are super important in Mexico are not by any stretch of the imagination Catholic anymore, right? And so this idea also of Freemasons connected to the Jews, like you're saying, oh, the Jews are in you know, like Argentina and they're in Mexico now. It's like, well, there have always been a lot of Jews in Mexico. In fact, Louis C.K. isn't like the you know, the non-normative in Mexico City. He would fit in, is another, like, as weird as it is for people to understand that there are redhead Jewish people living in Mexico, it's also important to notice they're not the minority. There's no pure Mexican citizen anymore, right? To say like an indigenous person or something like that would be a pure Mexican. That's not an accurate statement. So the idea also of the International World Bank or the Vatican Bank being associated with Israel, that's a long time coming. The main value to this might be a stable Mexican currency, because Mexico's gone through several destabilizations by, you know, in the 1980s, by disconnecting themselves from the, you know, the Western banks, right? They tried to have an independent banking system which had high interest rates. They basically allowed for banks to trade at more than 10x their rates, right? So it probably makes a lot of sense for Mexico to, you know, connect to re-ally with Israel. I think that's not a new thing. That's basically like the old thing.
The truth is that if Israel was getting more support from various countries, we might not be in the situation that we're in to the same degree. You know, like other countries stepping in, and no one wants to do that. We've offset ourselves with Russia, like it seems like never before. And so, like, you know, Russia's own relationship, it's like they could be stepping in to deal with things, but that's not happening. No one's coming to aid. Like Syria's not, Egypt's not. It's fucked.
I'm curious, in Mexico, are the Freemasons and Mormons working alongside the cartels? Is this like a P2 propaganda to lodge situation where the mafia and the Freemasons, and in that case the Catholic Church, are all in cahoots, or do they kind of like carve out their own little areas where, you know, this
Well,
part gets run by the Masons and this
I
part
mean,
gets run by the
what are their
cartels?
cash crops? You know what I mean? Like, and then what is there's all these there's two sides to that issue with the cartels. It's awful. And at the same time, like, a lot of the people love them, right? Am I wrong
Many
about that?
presidents of Mexico are Freemasons. Freemasonry greatly influenced political actions of the early republic. As holders of conservative ideas gathered lodges of the Scottish Rite, reformists chose the York Rite.
I mean, that seems fine and all, but it also feels that the cartel runs Mexico more than the Freemasons do. Like, if it came down to it, I almost imagine the cartel overpowering the Freemasons, even with their, you know, like secret handshakes that'll kill you if they like do it 5 times and your heart explodes. But like the cartel has actual militarized, you know, firepower. So
True, but the cartels only arrived in power in the last 50, maybe 50 years in Mexico. And again, that would be from the CIA. So
it's 2 generations, 50
yeah,
years.
I mean, that's again, see, I don't know if anyone's getting the point of that conversation, but yeah, Thomas, you're making a great point, and there is still Catholic interests.
Andreas is in God mode right now to the max.
For real, bro. I'm scared of this guy right now.
I'm gonna
I'm
get
like,
fact
This is what
checked.
happens. The guy
No,
gets to
that's not
80K
right.
subscribers and he just goes straight God mode.
Dude, he should be fucking like doing the debates, you know what I mean? Like, he seems like just like fact check. Let me step in for a second, school y'all motherfuckers. Okay, go back to debating.
I
How
swear to
crazy
God, I
is
heard a
we're not
buzzer.
getting that?
Robert Anton Wilson has that video on the cartels and the mafia and the Jesuits, right? Like the Vatican and the
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Vatican cartel thing. So it's like it's an interesting point to make that the cartels are associated with Catholicism and
Well,
CIA, because the CIA is associated with the Catholics, the Jesuits.
Isn't
as well.
am I ridiculous for saying this? But isn't the mob basically like an arm of the Catholic Church? Like, don't they like do work for the Catholic Church? Like, that's what I always got from like Frank Sinatra's connections and shit. Not necessarily the man himself, but everything he was tied into.
I mean,
It's like,
so this is very dubious, but I love going into the history of like the mafia, and the one that I don't think has as much credit, but that it originally stood for what like Mazzini authorizes, fires something and something, and that it was basically a branch off of Freemasonry in a way, that it started as the Carbonari, which meant the charcoal burners, where they would go out into the woods and like burn charcoal and talk about political revolution. And it was a very, I guess, my understanding after reading Mazzini's a couple of his biographies was that in Italy, if you wanted to have any power at all, if you even wanted to have like one person listen to you, you had to be part of a secret society. And there was so many of them that it was almost a given. Like, they weren't secret in that everyone pretty much had like a reason to be in one of them. And Mazzini joined pretty much all of them. And then he kind of becomes this de facto leader because he kind of rose up within all these like smaller groups. So then like out in the real world, he's kind of got this built-in rapport from everyone. And that this is sort of the DNA that shapes what the mafia becomes, where it's like this quasi government. It's like the government under the real government, the one that has the real power. So no matter who like comes in and plays the Game of Thrones upstairs, like they keep running the show behind the scenes.
How is that different from, I'm sure I pronounced his name wrong, but Weishaupt, the guy.
It's not, they get conflated all the time because they did very similar things, where Weishaupt did it in academia and Mazzini did it within like the political structures. Like, he did it with soldiers.
All you're talking about is organized crime. No matter if it's the Freemasons, the cartels, the CIA, they're all different hierarchical.
But that's the thing, if they get high enough,
operating.
then it's no longer crime. That's the whole point of being in control
Yeah,
of the
that's
dynamics.
that's the thing. So like,
Well,
if you go look up the word mafia and you look up,
I
like,
was only part of this show because I thought you guys had morals.
the word mafia
was a
comes
dogma.
from the etymological word from the Arabic mafit. Mafit is exempted from the jizya. The jizya is the name of the tax that is enforced on all citizens of a caliphate, particularly the non-Muslims. If you're not a Muslim, you're not giving money to the church directly, you're still living in the Muslim caliphate. you're required as a Jew or a Christian or a non-Muslim to give to that. There's a group called the Mafit, which will come and check on you to make sure that you're paying your protection tax at a certain point, right? That group was called the Mafit. And so the Mafit would check you out. So it's interesting to see how they started out as a legal standing, and after Italy's no longer under the caliphate, and under, you know, Sicily, all these places that were under the caliphate become more and more Roman. The Catholic Church, they have to start moving away from the Muslim church, the Muslim caliphate, towards working for the Catholic Church.
Right, but
And-
doesn't the Catholic Church have, isn't it tithing? It's 10%, Andreas? Oh,
yeah, it is 10%. Yeah.
So, but that's not what this is. This is actually like, it doesn't actually specify. It depends. What is it?
Yeah,
how
there's
much money you make is how much money you
more,
give.
I think. So like the thing is, the Muslims use the same rule as like the jizya tax, but I think that there's another rule. So like the Kharaj has to do with the like tax on land taxes. Jizya has to do with the non-Muslims. Non-Muslims might have to pay more due to Noahide. So I think it's like 7% if you're Muslim and 10% if you're non-Muslim.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
That makes sense.
See, and Mormonism's 10% too, right?
Well, yeah. Well, because again, the tax has to do, the tithing has to do with the order of Melchizedek. So order of Melchizedek is the order of Melchizedek is because Enoch and Melchizedek had the right to take taxes. So the taxation of the earth comes through Melchizedek. Interestingly enough, Minnesota has a new flag. I just noticed this. And no one was asked about it. It just sort of happened. This is the new flag.
Whoa.
And so
it's Nicole Kidman.
Elaborate.
Well, Nicole Kidman repeatedly in so many films does this, interacts with the 8-pointed star.
Okay.
And so you'll see it obviously in Eyes Wide Shut, like that's like kind of the go-to. But if you go through a catalog, like even like Bewitched, and what's the remake of the Stepford Wives, and she dies in the middle of an 8-pointed star, all that kind of stuff. But it just repeats anyway. Sorry.
She is not from Minnesota.
Well, it's an 8-pointed star in the rider deck of the star card, is it not?
Right.
Like,
I mean, it would be the star card. Yeah.
Right. So it's like a Saudi star issue reference.
So we were looking at Nicole Kidman's cleavage with like an 8-pointed star brooch. Is that what we're talking about?
Just over and over
in
again.
the Eyes Wide Shut, it's in the New Year's Eve scene, I think, when they're at the party. It's behind her head and she interacts with it, passing back and forth in front of it multiple times.
While she's dancing with the Hungarian vampire, who's apparently is aware that she's bleeding. She goes to the bathroom twice. Once before she leaves the house, when she
there it is.
She gets to the party. Yeah.
Gem. Truly outrageous.
Yeah. But
all roads lead to Kubrick.
We touched on the whole thing. Like, to me, if you're paying taxes for protection, I mean, and then those become sort of an abusive thing. Doesn't that fall into the same category as the Stanford experiment?
Well, you've seen Serpico, right? So like that, Serpico, yeah, the true story of Serpico. You know, like that guy. If you watch that guy's like talks at colleges and shit, it's awesome. Like
who watches the Watchmen type shit is basically
right. Well,
what it gets down to.
Well, in this case, you're dealing with so much corruption, you know, within the system. So this is a guy who basically was like so common enough where somebody finds themselves in this place where it's like they're on the take or they're an enemy of all their coworkers, and you don't want to be like that. So you don't really have an option but to be on the take. And otherwise, what are you going to do? And so the issues that are presented in Serpico, like those have only gotten worse, you know, and with the militarization of the police force on top of that and all of that stuff, like I never got like, I was like blew my mind that like defund the police was like a slogan for like that was being related. Like I get demilitarize the police because like in Santa Cruz, we got the fucking Bearcat, you know, and it's like, I've heard like the chief of police say, it was like, somebody got shot behind my house, like by police, like he was a military guy, and they showed up at his place for a domestic dispute, and he like killed the cop and then went down the street, and I had to like take my girlfriend at the time to the floor because there was automatic weapons going off like right behind our fence, like right by our fucking window, and they didn't know it's like a residential area or whatever. And so like the chief of police later on, like a year later, was talking about the Bearcat is like, it's like a crazy, like, militaristic police type vehicle that you can, shoot from inside of and whatever. But it was like, he said that he was like, if we had the Bearcat, that incident wouldn't have happened. And I'm like, what the fuck were you gonna do? You got a domestic dispute, you're just gonna like bust down the guy's door with the fucking Bearcat? I was like, you gotta be kidding me, dude.
Yeah, but I've heard this from some other sides too, that
Sure.
a lot of the time there's criticism about, you need 12 cops here to arrest one person. What is this? You know what I mean? Well,
SWAT police.
It's because statistically, the more cops, the more docile the person, and the less.
Well, no shit.
Well, I mean, and you're just applying the exact same formulas.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. You usually are, Thomas. The issue is that I'm looking at Apollyon. I'm like, order is great, but like order to an extent, you can justify so much, and then you just end up with like, a society that I personally am not stoked to live in. Like, I can definitely like resonate with a lot of libertarian values, but like wanting to actually exist in the Wild West completely, like that's not something I personally find like appealing. But like to each their own, you know what I mean? But like that shit, like I mean, I went to go study with my rabbi a few years back, and there was just like, it must have been 20 cop cars swarmed like one car where there was like a little drug deal going on, and they were in full SWAT gear and were like fucking screaming and fucking going crazy. I'm like, yeah, I realize that totally. I'm sure that makes them way more docile, but I rather not like.
Hear me out though. Hear me out. Let's say that there was a significant, and not like a silly, but like a significant culture shift where the cops actually start going after like bad predators and not.
Let's talk about Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
I was listening to movie analyzations of Dirty Harry recently, and they're back in the day when it first came out. It was kind of accused of being fascist. Dirty Harry like shooting.
No, it totally is, dude. He's the Punisher.
He is the Punisher.
It basically is the Punisher.
But imagine if Dirty Harry had a Bearcat. He could have ended that. That movie would have been like 15 minutes long.
But I mean, that's because, is it a product of the times though? Like we kind of take, the Punisher and shit like that for, I mean, even Batman's fascist. I remember Alan Green used to call Batman fascist all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
And he would associate it to Darkwing Duck.
Judge Dredd, bro. It's the guy
Darkwing Duck is like an echo and analog to Batman, his only weapon is like a gas gun, like a fucking tear gas gun.
Alan Moore took that further, and then Christopher Nolan took it even further than that, really, with like especially the second two Batman movies, the Christopher Nolan ones, because it's like you really have to question who the good guy is here, like big time.
Right. Yeah. They use everyone's cell phone to track criminals and be like, never again. We'll never use it again. Yeah. But I mean, this goes down to the whole there's been a huge conversation lately, guys, about like the A-bomb and the moral responsibility of America to actually use the A-bomb to say like there is, instead of the trolley dilemma, the trolley car dilemma, it's the A-bomb dilemma.
Are you saying this is a new realization, or what?
No, it was just it's a Tucker Carlson Ben Shapiro thing.
Oh, okay. So they were discussing.
I don't know if you guys
this issue goes pretty far back. I don't know,
But that's basically what the YouTube algorithm dishes me out now, is shitting upon videos. I guess you could say somewhere along the line I watched too many. So now every time something happens, it's just people shitting on whatever this person said.
Dude, my algorithm's all ferrofluid stuff. So you're doing something wrong, man.
I do a lot of things wrong, Thomas. I'm glad you brought them to light.
Ferrofluids? You mean, what are you saying? Like this ferrule?
The magnetic fluids that people like suspend in liquid, and then you apply like electromagnetic fields to it and make like cool little visualizers and stuff.
That's what you're watching? That's what your shit is filled with? Is that kind of shit?
It's like all science experiments and shit, yeah.
That and cat videos.
Yeah.
Is graphene or what? No, is that graphene?
It's a combination of like powder. And then I've seen a couple of videos on how to make it. I would just highly recommend just buying some. And then apparently also you want to put a magnet inside of a container and then play with it, because the second this stuff touches the magnet, it never leaves. Like, it's
So
impossible.
like if
get
you
it
put a
off.
magnet up to your arm after you get the vax, is this what's going on inside of it? Is that what your blood is
Oh
doing?
no!
I'm sorry. I don't want to get us in trouble.
I
So
didn't
here's
do that.
another shitting upon video. Have you guys listened to Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan?
Maybe.
Have you guys heard about
Oh,
this?
yeah. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I'm pretty familiar with.
Oh,
his,
you're talking about
one-time
the
porn
actor.
stuff.
Yes,
He's
the
going on
actor.
physics.
War Machine, yeah. Hustle and Flow was another big one.
Right.
Great movie,
You
actually.
know, it's hot out
Not a bad
here
movie.
for a pimp.
Awesome actor, to be honest.
So
Money for the
he
rich.
based a lot of what he claims, or what a lot about his new book is about, this individual named Walter Russell,
Yep.
who basically
Yeah.
said the periodic table was circular
Yeah.
and round. And you remember, hey David, you remember Ezra Sander Bell?
Oh, of course. Zanzibar or whatever it is. Yeah. No,
Yeah. Here we go.
Color Alchemy, Sound Color Alchemy or whatever. Yeah.
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 But
That's
the whole idea, I mean, I listened to a lot of Walter Russell stuff. I guess Walter Russell was an artist, a painter, and a sculptor who is very accomplished as both. But he wrote these books that basically said that he got illumination from God.
right.
Very
As
Philip
one
K.
does.
Dick, very David Koresh. In fact, everything that he said kind of like matches some things that Koresh said.
Well, you know, that actor, what was his name? The guy who was on Joe Rogan? What is it? The first guy?
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. So like his thing, like I'm actually right there with them, but his language in terms of like physics, like he's really poor with that, and so he kind of he unfortunately like ends up kind of discrediting himself with that. But at the same time, he's speaking it into a way that more people can kind of like conceive
Well,
it.
he flubs a couple of things a couple of times, and that's because he's like 20 million viewers on Rogan. I think we take that for granted. Like, that's gotta be pressure for anyone.
Well, even beyond that, it's just like he uses certain terminology that isn't actually applicable, like to what he's describing.
I
But
understand
I think the core thesis that he's presenting, I think, holds merit. And
what I'm paying attention to, okay, is he talked about, okay, so there's these concepts that we've brought up on here before quite a few times. The first thing that he mentions is this palace, that he used to go to this palace and he used to get information that he didn't have outside of the palace, because he says that the information doesn't come from him.
Right.
You got to understand that. Terrence Howard is not saying that he's a genius.
Right, but he's kind of saying he's a prophet in a way.
Yeah,
kind of. I mean, because other prophets, because I track it
more
down.
humble. I'm a prophet or I'm a genius.
Well, I think the question comes to how
if it comes from you or not. But basically, if you're an individual, like you can say Philip K. Dick is an individual who said that the information came from another source other than himself.
Right.
And he even acted humbly about it, because when he was shown the first kind of trailers for Blade Runner, he went back and was like, I did it. I just found this out because I did an interview with the guy who teaches a class on Philip K. Dick. His name is David Gill. David Gill said that he went through papers of Dick's where Dick was talking about watching Blade Runner and saying, I did it. I put Christian symbolism in the movie unintentionally. That's huge. That means that it was kind of like helped along the way, because that's what he says. He said, with Vallis's help, I was able to put Christian symbolism in the movie, because he didn't have control over the movie. He had no say in what was going on.
Right.
But now we look at all of his work and we see
like isn't the hero's journey as a whole the Christian symbolism, or was there something like very specific?
This is what's interesting, because we were talking about twin movies earlier, and Blade Runner came out side by side with E.T. And so I went back and I showed him E.T. and I was like, there was Christian symbolism here too. He's like, oh, I was wondering about that. David Gill was like, I was trying to figure out if there was anything else that came out at that same time that kind of matched what Blade Runner was saying.
Dude, do you remember the Spielberg 25th anniversary? And they didn't just add walkie-talkies to replace guns. They have that full-on baptism scene of E.T.
Yeah, it's excruciating. I can't. I
Is-
can't.
is-
I just
Is he
can't.
Jesus in this
I
comparison?
don't mind the baptism scene. ET being baptized is pretty cool. Like, you don't think so? You
But
hated
he
that?
is baptized. He's baptized. He comes back from the dead. He
He's
has the little
baptized in the
glowing
fire.
heart, like the Catholic Sacred Heart thing. I
Yeah.
mean, his connection to plant life, the rainbow at the end being the covenant with God. Like,
Yeah,
it's
he was
found.
already baptized by fire in the first place, and they just want to baptize him by water. But like the thing is that this ruins my sync. You know, like I was trying. It was like surprisingly difficult to just find the regular version of ET to download online, because you always get this like computer animated additional whatever, the special edition or whatever. But like, you know, because I wanted to play it with Poltergeist because they're the same length, you know. But like this fucks it up. Yeah, it's not, the sync doesn't work the same. What is this? This is a scene. This is, oh god.
It's the bathroom scene from The Shining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What if the woman, like, what if it was Shining? What if you could go in and put digitally ET coming out of the bathtub as the
ET,
old
totally
lady?
can,
ET
man.
is The Shining. ET and The Shining are the same story. Like
They
they
basically,
no, they built it on in The Shining. They say this was built on ancient Indian burial ground, and we had to fend off several Indian attacks while building it. And then you have in ET, it's you move the headstones, but you didn't move the body. Or I meant to say Poltergeist. Did I say ET?
but they're the same movie because
They're the same
Poltergeist,
movie. All yeah,
ET,
they
and what is the
connected
other
in-
one? Back to the Future? Is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, E.T. and Poltergeist both end with Kubrick references.
No, I thought that there was three movies that
in
were.
E.T. they play the drum roll from Thus Spake Zarathustra, and then in
I thought they all came
Poltergeist, the
from the
last
same
room
script.
that you see at the motel is 217, which was 237 in the book, The Shining. So like it's just they're, you know, they both are definitely taking from the same sources for the symbolism.
What are the movies that came from the same script? You've talked about this a lot, David.
Yeah, so there's Night Skies. So Night Skies was a script that actually, like, you can see all these different movies were kind of derived from it in different ways.
Gremlins. That's what it was.
Actually, Critters is the most like it, honestly. And you know, the original Critters. But yeah, Night Skies, here we go. So like, yeah,
I've tracked Critters. I've tracked Critters also to that. Okay. There was a real event in which a farm was attacked by aliens, and they were like using like, I think it was like 119 shotgun rounds,
so
or something crazy. Yeah, but it plays out exactly like Critters. If you watch Critters,
the script of Night Skies, they have a scene from Back to the Future that happens in it where, you know, when the DeLorean smashes into the barn and the kid comes out and he shows them in his comic book. This is also in the Twilight Zone, by the way. And Poltergeist is based off of a Twilight Zone episode called Little Girl Lost. Probably more than anything
Aliens
else.
From
Pretty
Pluto
overt.
or something. But
yeah, no, where he shows them, and it's serious. He says, the kid says in Night Skies, he goes, that they're from the dog star Sirius. And so you'll notice in both Poltergeist and E.T., they looks like they have the same dog, but it's actually a different dog. Like the sets overlap. They were filmed at the same time, you know? Yeah, Einstein. Yeah, so Einstein looks different, but still it works. And he's like, you know, you're going to see some serious shit when this
you're going to see some serious shit.
Yeah, and so like all of those movies are kind of like taking from the same, they're sharing in the same esoteric symbolism, relatively.
Well, both Philip K. Dick and Robert Anton Wilson saying they were getting transmissions from Sirius.
Right, which brings me to a question I want to ask Thomas. When you responded to something, Thomas, I'm like, have you seen the exegesis of Philip K. Dick? Have you looked at that before?
You guys have pointed me at it. I haven't looked at it yet.
You'd trip balls on that, dude. That's up your alley, you could say. And if you're going to look at anything Philip K. Dick, that would be my recommendation. Just like with Jung, I'd be like, look at the Red Book. You know what I mean?
This is a book.
Yeah.
It was too also mentioned on Rogan very recently. He had an individual who talked about simulation theory the entire episode, and he mentioned Philip K. Dick at least 4 times.
But did he mention the exegesis?
Yeah, he mentioned the exegesis and everything, but it just, I mean, every other word out of Rogan's mouth was about elk, so he had no idea who Philip K. Dick was. The guy was
I find that hard to believe.
He didn't. I was kind of like flabbergasted. I think that the whole
where they know that if they're
went over people's heads because nobody knows. See, here's the thing. This is the reason why I like Rogan. When I first became like interested in researching with YouTube, when I got free data with my cell phone, every scientist that I became interested in looking at had been on Rogan before, but Rogan doesn't necessarily understand the people that he's talking to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't they're not necessarily like good episodes, but the individuals who he talks to are in worth investigating.
Somebody
But I don't
says
think that's
Rogan
how
is
people use
irrelevant.
Rogan. I don't think
He is
people
a-
use Rogan that way. I think people
he-
just use Rogan to put him on in the background and not think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. I mean, he gets a lot of listens. I mean, he gets how many more listens than the highest rated show on television?
Yeah, I mean,
But,
irrelevant is
quadruple.
relative because,
Right.
like if someone was more relevant as a person, but if they have crappy guests or they have the same exact talk show circuit rotation of people that you could see on any other show, Rogan's were a place where, like, I don't know if I'd see like Paul Stamets talking in a lot of other places outside of Rogan.
Even if he was
Or nobody would care,
a
you know?
CIA agent, the thing is that there's such massive variables there. That's obviously not scripted. His show isn't fucking scripted, and he has a variety of guests of all different sorts. Like, they're not getting a script, you know? So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, but he is dictated by a certain amount of rules that he has to adhere
That's what I'm
to.
saying. Like, even if he was, he could very well be. I don't rule that.
And you're
out. I don't
also
rule
talking
anything out.
about a man who's getting paid more than any, CNN anchor or anything like that. Like, when you involve money, there's a certain amount of things you can and cannot say due to where that money is coming from.
I think what they did to Alex Jones was really like the warning that they were showing to Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan was the one that was kind of getting in and out of his sphere, along with Trump getting in and out of Alex Jones's sphere. But I really do think he was almost like the scapegoat, or at least the example that was made. That was like, okay,
Right.
Joe, are you paying attention? Because if we do this at your scale, it'll be even more of a downfall.
Well, I think that, Andreas right now probably has the strongest anchor as far as like continuing on the alternative news, like source of way to get information.
Well,
Because
that's what
before Rogan, we had like a healthy thing,
Right. Well, you had the technical director for CNN saying with the project, I always pronounce it wrong. What is it? Veritas? What is it?
Veritas.
Thank you. But no, that guy, dude, he said on camera straight up, he was like arguing that you'd get better news from podcasts, and he talks about like how things that CNN has been responsible for, helping to get Trump in office and all kinds of these things, and they're like, he explains how things came to be, and also like talking about the like death toll of COVID on the side of the screen on CNN for like fucking months, where they're just like, and he was like, I get a phone call on the red phone, like we have like the special phone from the people up top, and he'd be like, how can we get those numbers up? They're dropping. And the guy's like, how do I get the fucking COVID death numbers up? What are you talking about? Why, how do you, and that treatment of it, I think, really speaks volumes. But that guy, I think, was being honest throughout that exchange, which, I mean, these guys are going undercover. James O'Keefe, people like, they're going undercover. Like, these are dates, like Tinder dates. Like, people just think they're on a Tinder date. What better way to get information out of people? And like, because they feel like this kind of vulnerability that they like, and if somebody's like goes about that and artfully enough, like, I'm impressed by that a lot of that shit. Like, it's crazy. And when the people get, when James O'Keefe steps in or whatever, and you got that one guy from Pfizer was like trying to smash his fucking own laptop and shit. Oh my god.
What is this?
Or he's dropping the other guy's laptop, whatever.
The CNN effect is a theory in political what?
Is a theory in political science and media studies which states that global television networks and their modern ability to provide live 24-hour news coverage from anywhere in the world play a significant role in determining the action policymakers take and the outcomes of events.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you said it, man.
Because the way that I've always seen it, if politics were a product, then the news organizations, they're the stores. Like, that, they provide the window for you to walk by and decide if you're going to go in and like start buying whatever the hell it is that they've got to sell.
Right. You remember, do you guys see Anchorman 2?
Oh yeah.
So like Anchorman 2 like has like such a like significant subliminal scene in it, where series of scenes actually, where it's like there's Veronica Cornerstone, right? Corningstone, right? So she's symbolic already as the cornerstone, right? She's like some Shekhinah, whatever. But then there's like so she's interviewing Yasser Arafat. And this is like one of your classic like 60 minutes type interviews. Like this is like feels real, right? Like, and then there's like a police chase, and they're like, well, we don't do live police chase coverage, you know, up to this point. And Ron Burgundy wants them to switch it over to that, and they do, and they drop it. And if you look at the teleprompter while Veronica Cornerstone is interviewing Yasser Arafat, it just reads Israel ? Like it's like Israel's just totally like left hanging over there, and they're just like over there with the police chase. And it's right after that Ron Burgundy goes blind and moves into a lighthouse. And so I'm like, he's the anchor man. So like the anchor man is now blind because like the news has gone in this whole other crazy direction, right? For sensationalism. They're following sensationalism, just like the technical director explains what happened with CNN, how he says that they're no better or different than Fox in a way. He's like, we're all doing the same shit. And so, you know, but it's
That's
a
what I mean,
lighthouse, like a
though. I mean,
lighthouse.
we were talking about like shitting on videos earlier today. Like that's the popularity thing, is to just make fun of something else. Like before stuff even comes out, that's all we're doing now. Is like, oh, this movie's gonna fail. This movie sucks. That movie sucks.
Critical theory. That's all it is.
What does the lighthouse do? It directs the ship so they can box their compasses before they go out to sea. So it's letting you know where the fucking shoreline is. Like it serves this function. And so he's living in the lighthouse, but he's blind. So how is he supposed to lead the public when he can't see himself? So like in a nutshell, like that's what's become of mainstream media. And like if you go back and you look at like those old 60 minutes, like from the 70s and shit, I saw one where they're just like, they got like the head of the CDC at the time on like the hot seat and totally fucking call him out in a major fucking lie. And it's so it's real journalism, you know what I mean? But like, what is this we're looking at?
What is that?
The Summit Lighthouse? Tell us, Andreas.
God?
God? Are you with us?
Muted. God's muted.
God's muted.
You know who Elizabeth Clare Prophet is, right?
No, I don't remember. No.
Elizabeth Clare Prophet is a American spiritual leader, author, orator, and writer. Basically, she was really interesting and talked a lot about, you know, channeling spirits and angels and all this stuff. But if you got her onto the CIA, she would just like rant for 2 hours about like secret military studies and things like that. She was a loose cannon, pretty awesome. But she led the Church Universal and Triumphant, otherwise known as CUT. And influenced by Theosophy and I Am, the church originated as the Summit Lighthouse, right?
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
The Summit Lighthouse. Huh.
Yeah, the lighthouse.
Talking about Helter Skelter, that Helter Skelter is a lighthouse.
I feel like if you like Lucis Trust or any of the Alice Bailey stuff, you'd love Elizabeth Clare Prophet. One of the things that's cool about the CNN effect is that they kind of noticed it first during, you know, the 86 Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. So I mean, just think about how huge that was an effect on the world, you know, live satellite. Also the live rescuing of Jessica McClure Morales, right, which is like a major part of the 12 Monkeys movie, I believe.
Totally. Absolutely.
And
but the Gulf War, right? Stuck in the well, but then it turned out he was just hiding in a barn.
Yeah, that's right. It was the boy. But still, these kinds of things. And the Gulf War, right? Because the Gulf War was the first war that we could go in at night with GPS. It was like the home improvement lawnmower competition of wars, you know, like.
Yeah. I thought it was Star Wars. Like, did you guys see like when that happened? Like was it Beirut? Where it was like live in the 90s. And I remember watching the war live at night with the way that whatever they were fucking launching back and forth at each other, it just looked like lasers from Star Wars at the time. I remember being like, it can't look like that.
Sure that was Gulf War.
Gulf War. I'm talking about the Gulf War. I guess I jumped.
Yeah, yeah. Because on TV they showed like the night vision, and it looked like you could just see the tracers, but it looked like lasers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. whoa.
I
mean,
remember that. I mean, that was very like we do. Yeah, that right there.
It was so based.
Yeah.
So the reason why this excites me, like you have to understand, like the intention behind doing this. Nobody had ever taken Baghdad at night in history, and it's like a mythical thing. You know, that like an emperor could take it at night is just, it's crazy. You know, it's so the fact that we had technology that we could go into the desert using geographical positioning, satellite systems. It made it so that it's another example of fear itself, right, as a weapon, because the idea that we were that powerful means that we deserve to go where we please, in a sense, to like these to people who think of it as being like all powerful matters. So yeah, just this freaking beautiful. I know it's like violent, it's destructive and everything else, and yet they've inverted it to be like the color of Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. It's brilliant.
Right.
It's really
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars is fucked up, dude. If you ever watch Star Wars, they're like sad that their friend died, and 2 seconds later they're cheering that somebody's dead.
Star Wars, like the first like A New Hope, like has what I consider to be the most like symbolically
Amoral?
significant scene in like any history of all time. So like when Darth Vader is facing off with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and at first Obi-Wan Kenobi's on the right and Darth Vader's on the left, and Darth Vader has the red lightsaber and Obi-Wan has the blue lightsaber. So you're looking at like Chesed and Gevurah, and then you have him saying, Obi-Wan saying, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could ever imagine. And so like if you look at that like Kabbalistically as the two sides of the two pillars of the Kabbalistic tree, this whole like, because it's the judgment. So it's like the mercy saying, bring on the judgment. I know that what I am can't be destroyed. And it makes sense because Chesed is higher in the emanation, in the twist of the spiral. So Darth Vader is more machine now than man, because he's like taken over by Da'at. And so we've discussed this so many times, but it's all about his breastplate, where it says by his merits, you'll be judged by his merits. So it's like, that's kind of the whole thing, because what that speaks to is that to be the chosen one, or the chosen ones, is not brought about by favoritism, but by fitness. So like, that's what's on his breastplate. That's why it is actually meaningful when he takes off his mask at the end. And he's like, despite all the appearances of being more compartmentalized or more machine-like Gevurah is, at the center of it is something else, So
okay,
yeah,
so just so you know, I got a whole, because I think that individuals have heard us talking about that on Meta Egg, but this week the Acolyte started, and I know I'm not trying to sell you on the Acolyte.
I actually liked it.
There were quite a few times where it felt like old Star Wars to me, but that's all I say. I'm not making
Acolyte a movie or a TV show?
Not what I do. However, they did have a parasitic creature. Do you see the thing that was on the dude's face that looked like the starfish from like the DC comics? That they say in one scene they put this girl in a prison ship, and they put a parasite on this dude's face because he's a prisoner. But what they call it is this Hebrew word that I've just put in the private chat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Private chat.
That's what they called the parasite that was basically used.
Oh, Dybbuk.
Yeah.
Dybbuk is coded backwards in Hebrew.
So yeah, there's the Dybbuk in the Acolyte.
Pretty sweet, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple of good things in the Acolyte.
Like I just had a whole bunch of noobs, not noobs as far as Star Wars concerned, but noobs as far as sync is concerned. Like I had a whole bunch of Star Wars fans who sent me that.
It's great. And this is a great example of why I was so into. I was like, the Acolyte, there is something to it. And granted, there's something weird about Acolyte. Like it's supposed to be that R2D2 is a lesbian. I was like, okay, now I want to see it. And it's a missed opportunity because I really think that R2D2 could have been played by Wanda Sykes.
Well, they're saying now that Yoda is gay, okay? But we've all known.
I mean, we all knew he was probably a pedophile, right? Because he's kind of
right,
like
because nothing Yoda
he's like
says
900 years old, right?
He's probably,
When
I mean,
900
seriously,
years old,
the
you read.
Jesuit back thing, or like even the homopedophilic issues with the rabbis. Like, I think that if they don't put something like that in about the Jedi, then there's a disservice done in presenting the Jedi as like somehow perfect. And it's really interesting seeing how they present in the Acolyte the Jedi as like pompous police, like, you know, thank you for your cooperation, ma'am. All this stuff.
Here's the thing. Here's what's going to happen tonight, because the next one happens tonight. This one is the one that's supposed to disrupt everything. What they're basically going to do is make a whole group of witches, and they've used witches before, but they're going to basically say that witches have a connection with the Force that's not the same as what the Sith and the Jedi have with the Force. And it's going to be an all-female coven of witches that the speculation is that they have immaculate conception of these two twin girls. So all of these girls, so that's interrupting the whole idea of Anakin being the savior and being the only one who was immaculately conceived. It's basically saying that this coven of witches that represent the Force as a female entity, unlike that's their relationship to like a Wiccan coven, basically views that the goddess is a mother, like it's a mother goddess, anti-patriarchal religious system. That's basically what they're doing the same with the Force. But the problem is that it's part of like the culture war. I don't necessarily think do you have a problem with that, guys?
No, I think it's important. That's the thing. Like, people are super upset at this like new Star Wars, and the idea that the Jedi are the good guy and the Sith are the bad guy doesn't make sense. And the problem with that is it's too you know, like Disney teaches kids that ugly is evil and that pretty is good. Well, like the glamours and vexations of evil should be tricky, you know, and this is like, I think Pixar has done that more. So they've moved forward in Disney by saying, hey, you should be startled and confused by evil. It should be something that's clever and able to trick you. The other thing is the idea that the feminine is also in this particular instance being used, like romanticized, maybe like Slavoj Zizek would say, about the native and the indigenous path of magic is probably important because we spent so much time talking about the bureaucracy of the Jedi, right? And the problems with the bureaucracy. So the idea of this will probably lead to the audience being able to see, is it really that much better that a bunch of women are running the Force? I can't imagine it will be. And you look at the funniest thing was this line where it said, look, I was trained to be a Jedi. When that didn't pan out, those skills aren't exactly transferable. So there's a really kind of Hitlerian artist, liberal arts kind of metaphor about the Jedi, right? Like it's like a liberal arts degree that's non-transferable, right?
You know who this showrunner is, though, right?
Not Rick James. Sorry, I'm done.
Leslie Headland, the individual who is show running the Acolyte, is actually what's his name? Weinstein? Not Epstein, but the
Harvey Weinstein?
Predator from Hollywood.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant is who Leslie Headland is.
Oh, really?
Oh,
that is really interesting. And she's the one who said this was the gayest Star Wars ever, and that R2-D2 was.
Yeah, she put her partner as one of the main roles. And
Pandaverse. Excuse me.
Yeah, basically she's the acolyte of Kathleen Kennedy's Pandaverse.
How awesome would it be if she just takes over, literally like one for one replaces Weinstein, and now she just starts harassing all the male celebrities in Hollywood?
Yeah. Well, does she have a gangrene problem too, or whatever? His weird genital thing.
I mean,
Job of the Hut dick. Now. Harvey Weinstein has like a Job of the Hut dick, like actual disease thing.
No, she's more like Saloysius Chrome, the little
okay.
guy that's on Weinstein's dick.
I heard a theory that Harvey Weinstein actually gets off on humiliation, and that he started his own theory about like all the problems going on, and that every time someone like talks about that, like he's actually getting off on that.
Oh, I'm sure he's the C.S. Lewis of that world, but I actually like C.S. Lewis, so I'm not gonna go there. Really.
I mean, Harvey Weinstein produced some pretty decent movies.
Oh, of course, all those Tarantino movies and shit for days. Yeah. Absolutely.
I always
The-
wanted
the
to be a
one
producer
who
because it
was
seems like
kind
the
of-
job where you get to like have the most credit for doing the least amount of work, right?
You said it.
I mean,
Well,
but still, you gotta
Kennedy
be
is
good at
not
doing
new.
that.
Kennedy has produced, Kathleen Kennedy has produced some of the things. I bet you there's some shit by one of her movies right there in Thomas's room, guaranteed. She did the Gremlins. She did all kinds of shit. In fact, I watched this documentary, or it wasn't really a documentary. It was something on like, one of those, TV Entertainment Tonight shows that were back in the 90s or the 80s that were, it was about Steven Spielberg. And she was just like walking around in the background. He's like, yep, that's Kathy. But it's like she's been around for a lot longer than we give her credit for.
Oh no, absolutely. She's just the head of, what is she, the head of Lucasfilm?
Lucas Arts or whatever it's called.
Yeah. You know what? I have to point this out, and I probably pointed out to you guys before, but it's so fucking interesting to me, is that Yoda, the name Yoda. Do you guys know what Yoda means? In different languages. So yeah, you have Yud, but you have, yeah, exactly. But so in Hebrew, Yoda is one who knows, because it's the same root word as da'at, like, so knowledge, like the tree of knowledge, right? But then it's also in Sanskrit, it means great warrior. And they're almost pronounced exactly the same, like it's Yoda. And so what's crazy is that when Luke first meets Yoda, he says he's looking for a great warrior. So he's literally telling him he's looking for the translation of Yoda. But Yoda responds with, wars do not make one great, which also makes him one who knows at the same time. Just saying, he's Yoda from both sides, and he lives in Dagobah, which is a Buddhist temple. It's a Buddhist temple. So he's, they just took everything and put it together. I mean, Buddhism uses Sanskrit too, right, as Pali language.
I mean, there he's got a Jufro, right?
See, beautiful. Lucas is not Jewish though. Lucas is like Roman Catholic.
Yeah, George Lucas isn't. Oh, but you know what? He's married into a Jewish family.
He's married to a black woman.
No, but his Myers. What is that? His sister. I have his sister's autograph. She was a teacher at a Christian school that I had to go to when I was in junior high, middle school. But yeah.
Wait, his sister taught at whatever it's called, not Baymont, but the other one,
Monte Vista.
His sister taught at Monte Vista.
What is it? How's it go? His sister, his actual blood sister.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me, because obviously George Lucas is super into theosophy. Like when you look at Krishnamurti playing cricket with young Indiana Jones, which is
all over the place.
Actually, there's something going on with that. So the fact, I mean, I have a hard time seeing theosophy and the Bible thumpers like together.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time thinking that at least the original Star Wars wasn't largely inspired by theosophy. I mean, Alien was, admittedly, right? So like Alien has all kinds of theosophical references, probably more H.P. Lovecraft, but he took from all over the place. They both took from all over the place. This is an interesting image. I like that.
Is this from The Acolyte?
Seriously, right? This is from The Acolyte. It should be. I honestly all I'm saying is go all the way, like with Star Wars, you got to just take it and do what you want with it, with anything. And so I think Wanda Sykes as R2-D2 works better than anything else I've seen them do to Star Wars.
Wanda Sykes is in Star Wars.
Yeah, right. What does she play? Wanda.
She actually she voices a cinematic. She voices a character off of Bad Batch, right. But they've lined her up. Bad Batch was the first show that they showed somebody who was live action and turned them into cartoon. And they've lined her up to where, because Bad Batch takes place before Mando. Does that make sense?
I'm such a bad person. No one's going to let me be in charge of Star Wars if I keep pushing Wanda Sykes. But I swear,
she's going to show up. I guarantee you, she'll be in live action in the Mando movie in 2026, guaranteed.
I think it works better than you realize.
They set her up years ahead to where that character grows older in the timeline. She'll be as old as Wanda Sykes is in real time.
What's the over/under on this prediction?
Ooh, with Star Wars, Meta Egg gets egg on its face all the time.
Meta egg on its face, yeah.
So, as Meta Egg, are you the Eggman? Is that because you get laid, or is that just a happy coincidence?
Cuckoo, cachoo.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
I think that Star Wars has to do what it's doing because of Judaism. And the reason is because we've talked about this before, the Deuteronomist reforms and the lack of femininity after the fall of the first temple. What if Disney's Star Wars is the solution, like the Wittgensteinian inversion of all things for children, like Shrek, right? We've talked about how Shrek was made for kids because they don't have the pre-biased symbology. And then this is designed so that we can really analyze Chokmah and understand.
Okay, is that what's happening? Then this was all inevitable. But I mean, because like, let's face it, like every fucking superhero is female now. Most of the Jedi, like the entire show of Ahsoka was basically putting down men.
Just give our foreskins back already, guys.
I mean, we started with the hero, we got to the
foreskin.
anti-hero, and we ended up with the perfect anti-hero, which is the woman, right? And I think that is kind of the idea of the feminine archetype over the hero's journey. Is it has to do with the victim, and it has to do with, you know, being a victim to the world, but to your own choices also, right? And we have to see like characters which are flawed. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's more important than we realize.
Right.
So here's the question: is Star Wars social engineering? I'm talking about the original New Hope or Star Wars by George Lucas in 1977. Is using the hero's journey and using ideas from Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, basically doing the same thing as Edward Bernays did, changing the whole course of advertising with his, you know, hijacking of his uncle's ideas as far as psychoanalysis go. Like, is Star Wars wrong, or is Star Wars amoral?
Is it
because if it's amoral, then it doesn't matter.
Who's the judge of that? I don't know how we determine that.
Star Wars is so brutally about both spirituality and about the American industrial military complex in Vietnam, and about the draft. I mean, it's so hard
it's more overt if you read the book by George Lucas. Like, it's
super overt. I would say it's not even a little.
Right. But it's toned down with that film in certain ways, but it's still there. I mean, it's just.
But yeah, that's a good point that they've deleted scenes. So if you've watched all the deleted scenes to Star Wars, it's a whole other movie. It's a lot more like the book.
Yeah,
you know?
It makes it more Vietnam.
It's American Graffiti in space.
Right, yeah, but then you have the prequels bookended 9/11. So you have like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones bookended 9/11, and then the third one kind of corresponds to the second inauguration of George W. And so, like, the story of what was happening in society at that time, not just society, but like,
which is why this acolyte makes sense, because instead of Vietnam, you have the art student. This is what I mean. It's like Hitler. I mean, people don't understand about how that happens, how artists become fascists. And it's happening in front of us right now with the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Like everywhere.
Like, this is the story of every individual over the last like decade and a half who's gone to college.
Is like a little Hitler,
that doesn't matter anymore.
Look what's happening right now, though, is that I've never seen the artist class start acting so fascist because of the AI thing. That's like becoming a very, like, it's no longer this abstract existential threat. It's like an actual threat at the door. And I'm starting to see the people that I remember being like the most, you know, creative, left brain, right brained, but like always kind of open to sort of any kind of suggestions, are now becoming extremely militant, more than in my entire life.
You know what? Sort of this is what I gotta say.
AI is going to create like thousands of Hitlers, essentially.
Dude, it's true though. But let me tell you something. They were already Hitlers, because I'm telling you, I spent more money. I spent more money trying to get shit done in Fiverr and have artists come back at me and try to change my ideas to fit their purposes, instead of just doing what I fucking asked them to do, and I would pay them more money. They always try to come back and try to make it their project. AI don't do that. When I get into AI, I make projects that are my projects. That's the shit that I wanted. That's the idea I came up with, and nobody talks shit to me. If that's slave labor, then so be it. But
Also,
fuck it.
what enemy do you want to make? Do you want to make enemies with a bunch of art school dropouts, or do you want to
They're
make
still gonna
enemies
want
with
it. I
freaking
can make
Terminator?
bro, look at Andreas right now. Every thumbnail he makes is by AI. Oh, well, I mean, not physically look at him. He's God. He's not accessible to us. But his thumbnails are. And they're all done by AI. No one cares. No one cares. Everybody says they care, but they're still going to use the stuff when it's AI. And I guarantee you that most of those artists have been wowed by AI. Like, if you are an artist and you're worried about AI, it's because you're not self-confident enough in your own artistic ability. And that's okay. Because maybe other individuals, humans suck. They haven't told you that you are valuable enough. Go to AI. It will listen. People won't.
They might. Some people will.
I can't think of how that could go wrong. So yeah, I'm for that.
Somebody mentioned American Graffiti in the comments, and I just want to say that I think it's a trip that in American Graffiti, like, first of all, you got who is the Wolfman Jack, right? But there's symbolism going on in American Graffiti, like big time. There's when Richard Dreyfuss gets jumped into the Pharaohs. So Richard Dreyfuss, like, I don't know if you caught the news that just happened with Richard Dreyfuss, which is kind of non-news because they won't release the fucking video of what he actually said, but they're saying he said really bad things or really non-accepting things. I don't know. Yeah, slammed, whatever. But I watched the video from before the incident and I watched the video from after the incident, and they're talking about all these people walked out, and I'm like, well, shit, there must have been a lot of people there because he gets like thunderous applause when it's done. So I don't like, you know, I don't know what the hell. But yeah, Richard Dreyfuss getting jumped into the Pharaohs by attaching the chain to the axle of the cop car. Like, that's symbolic, I would say. Like, at the beginning of his career. Because he was like, what was his first movie? He was like The Graduate. Like, he had like one line where he's like, you want me to call the cops? When they was like in the dorm room or whatever. And he's like, when what's it? I forget the woman's name. Her husband shows up. Mrs. Robinson husband shows up. Do you know what I'm talking about? All these things? Are you familiar?
Dude,
with
it's been a long time since I've seen The Graduate. I know the Graduate movie. I don't remember.
Or American Graffiti, when he gets jumped into when Richard Dreyfuss gets jumped into the Pharaohs.
It's lost on me. I don't want to spoil
I'm just saying,
it.
like, you watch that now. Like, a lot of these movies, like, you may have watched when you were younger.
I remember Hair.
Symbolism gets lost
from that generation. I remember the Hair movie.
Oh, Hair, the musical of Hair.
That's the war movie that I remember the most.
Oh, I want to like that movie so bad, but I can't like that movie because I like the original Broadway production so much. And like, there's no video of that's available as far as I know. Like, I've looked.
Is this just a humble brag? This is a weird one.
What's that?
I feel the same way about Cats, by the way. Like, I can't even watch the movie Cats after you've seen the musical.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of Siskel and Eberts where it's like, they're like, that was a really good movie, and you know it was a good movie, but they're like, we saw the play or we saw the Broadway production and it just doesn't compete. I don't think that's as true anymore because the Broadway things are coming out after the movies instead of vice versa, right? Like, that's the frequency of that is kind of weird. Like so much like they do, like, every fucking movie is made into a Broadway thing. I'm waiting for them to do What About Bob? I might actually go.
Yeah, agreed.
I realized that maybe
there's
my
so many good
parents
ones
were
that
right
they could
about
do,
some
too.
things recently, as I have found myself ineffectual at waking up in the morning and going to bed at night. I guess since I never trained those habits, now I trained my body to sleep during the day and be awake at night. Maybe I'm overreacting. I have a tendency to zero in on one thing and think it's everything, and conversely to look at everything and think it's all
psychic driving. Is that your psychic driving?
This is like a test. Like, how far can I go with automating myself out of the picture?
Wow.
Was that not him?
He's trying to see if he can. Have we been talking to AI, Andreas, this whole time?
That's the whole thing. We've totally been fucking Lord of the Flies, bro. Except it's not the goddamn head. It was the AI. The AIs are drawing all the shit, bro. The flies are surrounding us. I'm freaking the fuck out now. That's not even the real Andre. His name, even like, if you say it right, it's AI Andreas. Like, he's AI, bro. He's been that way the whole time.
That's
the
why
whole
we need
time.
secret handshakes, man.
You know, Zach Bauer has that whole bit of Andre OS. Has that whole bit around like he gets a kick out of when something the humor in something being the whole time, where it's like a I think you should leave thing or something, but it's like, so you mean you were that the whole time? I can't really do this justice.
This
but
whole
it's a
YouTube
humor
channel has
phenomenon.
been a bad heist movie, and he just dropped the bomb on us. He rewrote
Andreas
the whole
has been
story
AI
in
the
last
whole
scene.
time.
This is no dream. This is actually happening.
What do you think about the idea that they're not pushing trades on the rich kids, right? Everyone's talking about how AI is going to replace things and like you should learn trades because trades are like the last job that'll exist for a minute. But like they're not teaching that to the kids that are telling to like move fat checks of money in Canada. You know what I'm saying? Like this is still not a.
I
What
know
do you think about
were
this?
saying.
Well, who hires the trade people? Right? If everyone's a trade person, then nobody needs to hire other. But like, if you get to be the rich kid, then you get to hire all the
You'd
trade
be an
people.
independent contractor, dog.
Yeah, don't you need a narrow? Aren't they kind of presuming you're going to have a narrow, deep education? Like you'll be good at carpets, and then she'll be good at plumbing, and he'll be good at roofing.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what it means. I'm pretty sure.
The only thing,
But you know, if you're in
carpet.
India, like I don't know if it's like this anymore, but I know like in India, it was your education is like specialized, like it's all directed towards something that you choose to do for a living when you're like really young. Like there's so many jobs to choose from. You're like, I'll do this. But what's crazy if you try and do that now, like there's jobs that just won't exist when you're older. Like that didn't used to be true. So like that system kind of.
We should have like a Harry Potter system where you join one of 4 houses, and then it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be specialized, but like those 4 houses do different types of industries. So now it's like no matter what you do the rest of your life, you fit into one of those 4 buckets.
Right.
And those 4 buckets are based solely off of stereotypes.
Okay, I was gonna send this to you, Thomas, but we were talking about Star Wars. I thought I'd just share it with you. I don't know if you guys.
This was my absolute favorite scene of the Civil War movie by far. Like hands down, this was the best scene of the whole movie.
Yeah, it's fucked up. The tensions are high, but this is a good meme. I approve of this meme. You know, because what kind of Star Wars fan are you? You don't say A New Hope. You don't say Empire Strikes Back. You don't say Return of the Jedi. Okay, Phantom Menace. Okay, I don't know. You know, Rogue One. All right. That's Star Wars.
What's the one with Jar Jar?
I could take Phantom Menace is my favorite movie and translate that as Take Me to Your Leader. I guarantee that could get you right.
Wait, is Phantom Menace the Jar Jar Binks one, right?
Yeah.
3 of them,
that legitimately is my favorite
look
Star Wars movie. Yeah, and the only reason is because I never had a gatekeeper to tell me that I wasn't allowed to like that one the most until way after I have seen it.
My gatekeeper was mushrooms. Take mushrooms and watch Phantom. So you'll be a Jar Jar fan.
And well, I want to say
Jar Jar's a distraction.
It's in spite of Jar Jar. The rest of the movie was cinematically a way more engrossing experience than any previous Star Wars movie. Every other one, even as a kid, I remember having to convince myself like, this is good because I was told it's good. This is good because it's,
I don't know if I agree with that.
How old are you, dude? Are you what age are you? Are you 20?
He's not wrong, bro. Like there's so many problems with the original. Like, hey, as someone who loves Star Wars, right? Like the first Star Wars is cool because it's a fail. It's a major fail. It breaks the 180 like 30 times. The way it's cut. They have to use like they reverse the sand people and scrub it forward and backward a few times. They just barely got a movie out. And it's interesting to think about like how, you know, George Lucas nearly died trying to make a movie and he realized from now on he shouldn't make movies. And he gets other people to direct the movie and edit the movie and he just sort of like leads the product. Like that's brilliant. Like there's a reason why other movies are better. But Star Wars Episode 1 is after he made the Young Indiana Jones series, where he's like, wait, you mean I can take $1 million per episode, fly to any place in the world that I want to go and just shoot a movie about like a little boy falling in love with a princess? Yes, please. So he'd done that and he figured, okay, I can do that with Star Wars with special effects now, because they ended Young Indiana Jones with all kinds of ILM special effects to make it look like it was the 19th century. He's like, I could do that with Tuscany. Let's do it. And then he goes full Tommy Wiseau and like The Room. He's like, we'll shoot it digital and film. We'll have puppets and we'll have, you know, real characters. Like there's there's so much that goes into episode 1. It's like the Ford Edsel. It's got every like feature, like you could think of. And I think that I wish that he was gatekept from his fans, because if he hadn't heard people's opinions on the movie, he probably would have just kept going, but like, yeah, but see, when you get there, you'll understand what it's about.
No,
And
that's
because
when you just get a look from Jar Jar in the third one that's like super passive aggressive and like really kind of awkward.
Which is what happens. But originally the plan was that Jar Jar Binks was going to like leave blowing up the building behind him, holding like a holodeck with a bunch of Bitcoin on it. Right.
Right.
That was like written into the episode 3 script, and he had to change it.
Good point, but the thing is that I like the cut up method. Like, I'm a sucker for like the way that THX 1138 was shot. Like, it puts me into a certain space that I just can't get from the prequels. My appreciation of the prequels has everything to do with subtext, and the subtext of the Star Wars prequels, I will give you this, is actually more direct than the original Star Wars trilogy 4, 5, and 6. But like, I see THX 1138 in Star Wars, like he was like, fine, you guys aren't ready for this. I'll give you a fucking princess and some droids.
Yeah, that's why he made Jar Jar. He doesn't respect his audience. I love that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and also, what kind of audience is it? We're talking about the same audience that collectively bullied a child out of Hollywood, right? Like the poor young Anakin Skywalker, whatever.
Right.
Oh,
Who has like
talking about
schizophrenia now because of it.
Gina, whatever the
If
lady.
there's not a better example of how shitty the Star Wars fan base is it not attacking a child because I don't even understand, because again, it was unironically my favorite Star Wars movie. So when I found out years later this poor kid got bullied out of existence, it blew my mind because I didn't find anything wrong.
Fun fact, when my dad calls me on the cell phone, I have the photo set to little Anakin Skywalker. I think that yeah, he's like a major epic child. And yeah, while the symbolism is more clear, I still think people miss it. Like, if you think about how Star Wars is about this elite family that has so much power that they're able to influence every level of society, then what's interesting about the episodes, the prequels, is the failures of democracy, how Germany collapsed, into fascism, how the West is doing the same, how we're no different we've no better, like we've not progressed at all since a long time ago. We're not, all of these things, and that it's the people trying their hardest, right? Because people are always like, oh, Jar Jar Binks is evil. Well, maybe, but what's more interesting is that he is trying to help. Like, he's trying to help, and it causes more trouble. That is what people are
more
like.
trouble. You're like, don't do me any favors, Jar Jar.
Right. Yeah, because he's the one who says, hey, I think we should give regional power direct to the chancellor. I propose.
He never says I, he says Misa.
Misa propose. Yeah, and I think it's really important that everyone thinks he's this, cute, ineffectual, benevolent character. It could be that it was all a veiled, evil character. I think that they've tried to grow that over time, but it's enough that he's just.
Is he Dark Brandon?
Yeah, that's kind of the deep-seated thing, because you have to think about it. He's there at the beginning. He's following the Jedi. He's been exiled from the community already. He maneuvers himself in charge of their community. He becomes in charge of the entire planet in the government system. He ends up underneath the chancellor, basically running the committees for the Republic as it's turning itself into an empire. And everyone trusts him because they think he's an ineffectual leader. He's your archetypical DC politician, right? He's like a senator. He's your average, real, legit senator. And so the question is like, okay, is this guy just an idiot who's helping himself?
No, it's a wise man to play the part of a fool phenomenon with.
Of course,
for sure. Yeah.
Of course.
Are we talking W or Trump at this point?
I think even more like Kerry or something.
Carrie's a good one.
Yeah. Andreas, can you go to my my Twitter, because there's something that's so insanely applicable that I shared recently that I just want to reference. So if you scroll down a bit, I don't know what you have to scroll down past, but keep going. Keep going. Sorry, I thought it was more recent than this. Okay, there it is. Okay, look at what's above that. Okay, so I want to It's a C3PO.
That's nice.
Okay.
I know what
So
that means.
okay, so if you could click on here. Okay, so C3PO is so obviously the male equivalent of Maria's robotic replicant from Metropolis. Metropolis is an archetypal retelling of the story of Babel set in modern times. In the allegorical story from Genesis, no one could understand each other's speech following the tower's collapse. C3PO is a protocol droid who is fluent in over 6 million forms of communication. In this sense, he is Babel's solution to the fall of Babel. A substitute or stand-in, like Maria's replication, was a stand-in for the high priestess. The principle behind this is likely extrapolated from Zohar, what with Lilith standing in for Shekhinah during the interim of the fall. I would postulate further that the C3PO, or that the 3PO in C3PO stands for Three Penny Opera, which came from Germany around the same time as Metropolis did. Those familiar with Tracy Twyman's supposition that Mac the Knife is Mickey Mouse might find it as applicable as I do that Disney would eventually end up with the rights to the Star Wars franchise. So, like, you know, Hitler was quoted, right, as saying, like, being impressed by Disney and their propaganda abilities. You know what I mean? Like, and Metropolis is like, I mean, that does have some crazy connection to not just Star. Like, I would associate THX 1138 with Metropolis more than I'd relate it to almost any other movie, you know, except for maybe Logan's Run, which came afterwards, if I'm not mistaken.
You know, that's the license plate in American Graffiti.
Is THX 1138?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and the
thing that I like
TK421 and
about-
Boogie Nights and the Stormtrooper from the original Star Wars, that, you know, the TK421 repeats over and over again. It's a sync thing.
TK421.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cell block 1138.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Also, isn't and the gematria for Powerball is 1138.
Mhm. Yeah. Interesting. The gematria for Powerball in what, English? Simple
Oh
English?
no, I'm sorry. Thunderball. Well, no, what's the movie I'm talking about?
Oh, Rollerball?
Rollerball is the one. Yeah, Rollerball. Rollerball is 1138. Gematria.
Dude, Thomas, what were we talking about before the call? Ghost Rider.
Oh yeah, Ghost Rider. Well, you guys were talking about a different Ghost Rider, but whenever that word comes up, the only one I can think of is the PBS show.
Yeah, we're talking about PBS Ghost Rider, W.
I got that comic, by the way. I picked up that first appearance of Ghost Rider, which is Marvel Spotlight number 5. I picked it up for $4 at an estate sale. That's comic book is probably over 300, I'd imagine, not closer to 6. But this is the TV show you were talking about.
What is Ghost Rider? Is this about like children channeling mediums?
100%. That's what I was saying, is that I think
It
there were some
basically had a
Christian
cursor.
connotations to it, but they're actually kind of doing like Ouija board style summoning with spirits, where Ghost Rider is a
Automatic
ghost like
writing.
trapped in a library or in a book, and whenever they open the book, they can kind of like talk to him and ask him questions, and he rearranges the letters on the page, hence the name Ghost Rider.
Right.
This is a very common theme, by the way. Even in like Percy Jackson, who's kind of like a dyslexic, and he sees words and they rearrange on the page, and that happens also in like Shutter Island. Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio realizes that everybody's name that he knows is different.
Well, you know, the ninth gate at the intro to the ninth gate, when they go through 9 gates during the credits, when they go through the 9th gate in the intro to the 9th gate, if you start Roman Polanski's Ghost Rider at the same moment, which he may have got his name from this, I wouldn't even be surprised. I don't think it's the same name as the book. Polanski.
Well, I mean, the Ghost Rider is
that will be, if you started at that second, you start Ghost Rider when he goes through the 9th gate, then it'll be the exact same length, because they got the credits at the same time. But it's not just they cut the credits at the same time; it's that the credits of the 9th gate is all fire. You're looking at flames, and then the credits of Ghost Rider is all like done like CIA documents. Because like, if you've seen that movie, it all centers around an acrostic where it reveals that the woman was an assassin with the CIA. The guy's wife, whose memoir it is. So Pierce Brosnan's wife is like a CIA assassin, and they reveal it through the acrostic. But what's crazy is that in the 9th gate, the fictional book, the Book of Shadows that's in that movie, is based off of a real book. Fuck, I forget what it's called, but it was published in 1499, I believe, and the movie came out in 1999. But that book contains an acrostic that reveals the name of the writer of that book, and the story is literally like a dream within a dream within a reality within a dream. It's like one of those trippy ass things. But what's one of the most mysterious things about that book too is they don't know how it was bound, like how not just bound, but like how that book was printed. Like it was a really odd. It was like the early days of the printing press, and yeah, it's just. This is a crazy whole rabbit hole thing, but this movie connects to the Ninth Gate. Polanski will do movies about witchcraft and CIA back and forth, like and over again.
One after
Sometimes,
the other.
anyway. Yeah.
Well, this was a
But-
Polanski movie.
Yeah.
Because mind control and witchcraft are the same thing, right? Like most,
Right. So,
that's what the
yeah,
ideas of glamour are basically making things appear like that's like a lot of people say that advertisement is largely based in witchcraft, and that the whole discovery of psychoanalysis is basically just understanding how magic works on the subconscious.
right. Ewan McGregor, I believe, was archetype casted for this movie, which is something that goes on a lot, but Polanski's guilty of that a lot when he'll like, because he has like Sigourney Weaver and freaking Ben Kingsley in Death and the Maiden, which is another CIA MK Ultra movie. It's about somebody Sigourney Weaver was like MK Ultra experimented on, and then the guy shows up and no one believes the other.
Well, you could say Star Wars is MK Ultra. You have Palpatine raising Anakin to be an assassin.
That's exactly where I was going with it. Thank you. So like Star Wars, like totally can like, because you have to like, that's the thing with Star Wars. It's got all this show. There's all of this whole production, and then you're like, look at the bare bones of what's happening, and you'll find that the like 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, and 3. I don't know as much about the other ones necessarily because I'm no expert on them. I think I've only watched them each once. The J.J. Abrams ones, but those other 2 sets,
those took me a while to figure out. I think I got them figured out. I think I got a dopamine problem. People think that I like stuff and don't like stuff. That's not how I operate. I operate.
I hear you. I'm like that, and I'm like that with sync stuff because I end up listening to music that I would otherwise never fucking listening to. I end up watching movies I would otherwise never fucking watch.
Right.
But the sync web led me there, and now I have to look at it. So
let's talk about ghostwriter as it associates, because I think of Philip K. Dick. I mean, Philip K. Dick basically said that God wrote his books without his knowledge.
Yeah,
like God was his ghostwriter. I mean, that's basically what most prophets say. Prophets say that God tells them to say things. We don't understand what those things are. And then basically Revelations and the New Testament says that you have to understand Jesus as according to the prophecies. That's what it's
right.
That's what it.
And God is the ultimate ghostwriter in that sense, right?
Right. But what if prophecy is technology? Like most people, like this isn't a new thing. We were talking about homeboy Walter Russell earlier tonight. There's Swedenborg. What's his fucking name? There's Smith. Like there's an exhaustible
I think technology gives you
say they've talked to God.
Yeah, technology gives you access to a type of prediction, and it can assist in a certain insight. But prophecy itself, from a technical standpoint, I don't think it can do that. But there's a malleability to media in general that can.
It's either technology,
but that's still
like,
you.
It's either a clinical diagnosis, which means that's a technical term, anyways. Like you're either saying that there's a scientific reason, or you're saying that the reason is science. It doesn't matter. They both equate to the same thing.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because you're
science can't ever be a reason,
individual
though.
is crazy, or they had too much methamphetamines, or what the fuck ever. Like what the fuck ever you want to say, like that. Though these specific reasons are just ways to discount the overall arching effect, anyways. So just ignore all of that because it doesn't matter. When you sit there and say like, well, don't listen to that guy because he's crazy. This goes back to what we were talking about with sync. Like, I don't see bad movies or good movies. I don't see crazy people or not.
Right.
I see the individuals who had a certain experience, and then all of those are on the table. All human experiences are on the table, whether they lie, fake, whatever, doesn't matter.
Right. I hear that. Yeah. It's all valid. I mean, the thing is that, you know, how much of the viewer is influencing what it is that they're viewing. Like, you could watch the same thing once and you're not watching the same thing another time. You know, it's like Bruce Willis said in 12 Monkeys in the theater, you know, but it's like,
but it's an absolute truth. Like there's things like I've gone back and watched old sync movies that I've watched, and I've been like, I don't even remember fucking cutting that, bro. I don't
Yeah,
even.
me too. Yeah. If I
I
watch
never,
parts of
I
Star
never even
Cassandra, it
made
does
that
that to me.
connection.
I'm like,
I've
really?
seen your films multiple times and made different connections.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they encourage that more than a lot of things do because they're already so malleable. So the media is malleable to begin with, like the individual components, but then when they're put together and they contrast, it makes it even more malleable. Like that's what really interests me about like this whole thing. Like my interest in media has a lot to do with like one's own like relationship. Like also you can document things that you could find in nature, and they exist in nature, but this has to do with like our goings on, which we treat as separate. So if you find places where the line is less of a line in the sand, while like you can see like definite points of like influence, between like like what somebody was actually getting at or envisioning, and then you see certain clues and you're like, oh, they're like, you're almost having a conversation with the creator of the art form, but then you just like, there's people that goes far with that, like, and I get annoyed by it because like there'll be people that are like, you'd think that they have a personal friendship with Kubrick, and you're like, dude, you never met that guy. Like, I never met that guy. I don't know what the fuck when it really comes down to it. The only reason why I'd get like Kubrick tattooed on my arm was because I was just like, I don't know of anyone else that to this degree that I'm constantly learning new stuff about, like endlessly. Like, I'm like, how much can I research somebody and just find that there's new insights, They're like literally endless.
Elizabeth Clare Prophet claimed to receive messages from the Ascended Masters, a group of enlightened spiritual beings who guide humanity's spiritual evolution. She delivered these messages through dictations, which she presented as direct communications from the masters. Key teachings. Her teachings emphasize personal spiritual development, the power of decrees, spoken affirmations, and the concept of the I am presence, the divine essence within each person.
This is like if Lex Friedman
Her
had a
teachings
baby with
included Saint
Andreas.
Germain, Jesus Christ, and other ascended masters from various religious traditions. Books and lectures. Prophet authored numerous books and delivered lectures worldwide, making her teachings accessible to a broad audience. Her works include The Lost Years of Jesus, The Human Aura, and Saint Germain on Alchemy, among others. Church Universal and Triumphant. After Mark Prophet's death in 1973, Elizabeth Clare Prophet continued their work and founded the Church Universal and Triumphant Cut in 1975. The church combined elements of Christianity, Eastern religions, and New Age spirituality. It became known for its dynamic rituals, including the use of decrees and elaborate ceremonies, criticisms and controversies. Apocalyptic predictions.
Is the whole Wikipedia page?
Prophet made several apocalyptic predictions, which generated significant media attention and controversy.
It's gonna follow the link in the bottom of the page and start
1980s,
reading
she
that
predicted
one.
a potential
Yeah, like
nuclear-
Biden does.
I
When
like-
he's got his teleprompter.
I like how AI Andreas talks over you just like the regular one does.
This is the best part.
See,
In
this
the
is
late
it. This is-
1980s, she predicted a potential nuclear war, leading her followers to prepare extensively, including
Hey,
building
bro.
underground shelters.
AI Andreas's voice is deeper.
I'm listening. This is the best part. He said, an important part. We can talk
Oh,
about it.
just her prediction of the nuclear thing, because she was like suggesting that in the 80s there'd be like nuclear wars and that we'd have to prepare for like nuclear devastation. And so a lot of people wonder, like, was that X Day? Because her thing synced up pretty good with Subgenius X Day 1998, which was the idea that we would hit a peak slack. X Day is also similar to the Unarius cult day, where they thought that Unarius thought in 1998 that there would be like
Whoa.
landing UFOs
that
that would
This
arrive.
isn't AI, bro. Like,
No, I'm hey, it's me. This is real.
I mean, damn, we can't trust shit no more.
No, you can tell for now.
This is more exciting than the other stuff, just so you know. Like,
No,
this is
I've
like the
watched
step up in
his
its
videos before
personality.
where I'm like, wait a minute, no, and it doesn't take me long. It usually just takes like a few seconds before I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's not actually. He's just having a script being read by his AI in his own voice.
Right, but this
happened to me a few times.
is tight enough research to be a script.
Yeah, to be fair, I
Now,
use
go back
ChatGPT
one more.
to algorithm.
So her day was this 1998? Is that what I'm reading?
Yeah,
Or
so July 5th, 1998 was scheduled to be the end of the world. It was also Elizabeth Clare Prophet talked
so
about
Genius Day.
nuclear, Claire Prophet, Elizabeth Clare Prophet talked
It
about
was
the
also
end of the world
mentioning the
nuclear.
men from Planet X, which would make them the X-Men, no?
I mean, but everyone was talking like Terminator is about 1997 instead of 1998, and then they like put it off. So obviously, it's not going to happen in 1997, but it happens eventually. So it could happen in 1998. So 1996 handed day-to-day operations of her organization over because she was concerned about the nuclear coming, which again is also something that George Lucas said he was worried about, like the 2012 disaster. So he got rid of Star Wars. Although he says he was joking now, I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, do you guys ever seen the Twilight Bark? I think it was the sequel to Lady and the Tramp or 101 Dalmatians. I can't remember which of the two it was, but the premise is that
101 Dalmatians.
101 Dalmatians. So the sequel to 101 Dalmatians called the Twilight Bark, and the same premise where I think that while they were writing it, they then went through
Starlight Barking.
Starlight Barking. They end up leaving Europe to avoid getting drafted, I guess, and they moved to the US to kind of become like conscientious objectors in a way. And through this, it shapes their minds. So now the Dodie Smith is writing the Starlight Barking as though the dogs know that there's going to be this like oncoming apocalypse, like a nuclear apocalypse, and that a dog god from the Sirius star system comes down to Earth and tells all the dogs this. They all wake up and the people are like stuck asleep. And the dogs, first of all, they can fly at like subsonic speeds. They like hover over the ground and they like zip around. They can control technology with their minds, and they can telepathically communicate with each other. And they basically have to decide whether they're going to leave with their god
Harry
and go back
Potter
to the Sirius star system
Dalmatians?
or save humans.
Jesus Christ. Does this connect to what was the at the beginning of this conversation?
Walter Cruntington.
The comic book where he's like they're from the Dog Star Sirius. Does the book talk about Sirius or?
No, it 100% does.
Yeah, okay. I guess we talked about
Walter
this.
Cruntington.
Yeah, trippy. That on the cover of that book though, there's totally that Chihuahua's sniffing the ass of that other what was it, the collie, border collie.
Starlight Barking, dude. That's like 2013 synchromysticism right there.
They made a movie. It just ended up being really horrible.
Really? Isn't that
I can't remember the name of the damn movie. It was a live action one.
I feel like every
That's
time
the best
we
place
bring this
to
up,
find sync.
but what about Watership Down and this I don't think it was really a sequel to it, but it was the other book that they made into a movie for that guy. I feel like it had like because the Watership Down had like Holocaust like symbolism or whatever, but the other one is way worse. It's horrifying. What the fuck was that called? What's the other book by the guy who did
he does a bunch of books. He did one about a bear called Shadik or
but the one that they made a movie out of that wasn't Watership Down. The Plague Dogs. That's the one. That's what I'm talking about. So there's a cartoon of this, and it's fucking horrifying. It's worse than Watership Down. These are not kids.
Plague Dogs are what rats were called, weren't they? Like Reservoir Dogs, or
maybe.
No,
I don't know. I mean, there's the Rat King thing, which is pretty crazy. You know what a Rat King is, right? A rat king is when all the rats are caught in their tails have this kind of slime, crusty shit that attaches them together, and they're in a big bunch, and it's an indicator of an epidemic coming. And so, if you watch Lars von Trier's film Epidemic, he describes the whole thing about the significance of a rat king as like it implies that there's an epidemic coming, and so. When he did the house that Jack built, he hardly said anything about it before or after it was released. Like he barely like spoke on it. But one of the very few things he said it's a movie about the Rat King, and he describes it as like what like Trumpus erectus. So he's talking about Trump, but then he's treating it that it's a rat king. But a rat king wouldn't mean that it's just Trump. It would mean it's the whole administration all caught up, and it's the sign of that there's going to be a fucking plague. But yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
This movie looks nuts. I thought Watership Down was hardcore. Plague Dogs.
Plague Dogs is worse, and it's got a tragic, fucking gnarly ass ending.
Watership Down and Plague Dogs would both make epic video games. That is 100%.
That's true.
Bro, starlight barking is badass.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, it's really pretty and I think Disney ended up cutting ties and not develop the rest of that because she became like anti-war, and Disney was obviously very pro-war. Like you were even saying that Hitler was impressed by their amount of propaganda, which he
Yeah.
must have been really impressed because Disney created Victory by Air Power, which was a feature-length animated movie about how the US could win the war against Germany by just using air power. And that was kind of this way of saying, this is why we're doing rations, this is why we need you to cut back so that all the metal can go towards this badass sort of fighting fleet. And it was like, it's actually a very fascinating movie if you've never seen it. It's 100% government propaganda, but it's done
Wait, what is it
so
called?
well. It's called Victory by Air Power.
Oh, okay. Huh.
And
So
it's
there's all of
basically
this.
a Disney movie.
But what's
There's
the one
all of
Disney
this
made that's like, is it like 1958? Like, well, you could tell like after they made The Absent-Minded Professor, and by the time of the second Absent-Minded Professor, like Son of Flubber, that he was less and less interested in the government and had issues with the government, right? Like the Son of Flubber talks about how the government locks his trademark up so they can't advance Randian society. It's basically Atlas Shrugged. Flubber
Well,
2 is Atlas Shrugged. It's the
he
best.
was also a little bit slighted because this is from Dark Disney, I think it's or Hollywood's Dark Prince. It's a unauthorized biography on Disney that's been refuted by his family, but he makes this claim in there that Hoover actually anoints him special agent in charge of the FBI under this guise that they found. This is like the coolest backstory in Disney. So all the Disney movies is essentially about a kid getting kidnapped or like this prince or a princess that is unjustly removed from her royal throne and we have to restore it. Well, he had this major complex with his parents, his dad in particular, and he always believed that his dad was an imposter or that he was kidnapped from like some better family and forced to live with what essentially becomes like an evil stepmother as his dad. And the FBI gets wind of this in some aspect and basically tells Disney, hey, we found your real dad. You're right. You come from Spanish royalty. Like you're actually a real prince, and we're going to help you connect this and get all these pieces together. But we need you to do some stuff for us. And they were basically getting him to become the insider for, the Red Scare within the animation industry because he was big inside of just, Hollywood. And that he got really slighted over this because I think at some point, he realizes they were just kind of lying to him the whole time. They were just manipulating him.
Oh, the whole time he wasn't actually a prince.
No, his dad was his real dad. And that the FBI was just playing on this fantasy that he had built up in his mind as just an easy way to get him on board. Again, this is from the unauthorized biography, and it's all been refuted by his family. But it sounds like the pieces fit together too perfectly.
Yeah, that's like Bobby Darin meets Lars von Trier.
And you guys ever saw the movie Moon Pilot?
No.
So I think Moon Pilot is the one where you realize that Walt Disney no longer trusted the government, was probably upset that Kubrick was hired instead of him. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's,
I believe it.
yeah, and I think it's really interesting. It's based on Robert Buckner's novel Starfire, and it reflects Disney's interest in the American space program during John F. Kennedy's presidential era. But yeah, basically a lot of problems. Air Force Captain Richmond Talbot inadvertently volunteers to make the first crewed flight around the moon. He's ordered to keep the upcoming flight a secret, even from his family on his upcoming leave. And so this is also like, he thought a lot of the secret stuff was kind of like over the top because it should be that you're making up stuff that people don't even know what's true. Like that's how you do Disney. On his flight to visit his family, Talbot is approached by Leray, a mysterious foreign girl who seems to know all about the astronauts' coming mission. She approaches Talbot to warn him about possible defects in the spacecraft. He assumes she's a spy, runs away from her, and contacts the Air Force. The Air Force orders him home and places him under the protection of national security, a thinly disguised FBI. Eventually, Leray reveals that she's a friendly alien from the planet Beta Leray. She wants to offer him a special paint formula, and when applied to his rocket, will safeguard his brain from proton rays. This is the most real thing ever.
Wow. He's out. He's all my
tinfoil. That's like the original tinfoil movie. See, I like this whole starlight barking and the dogs like.
I found the movie, by the way. It's called Good Boy from 2003.
2003.
Just read the premise
A
of the
Boy
movie.
and His Dog from like 1967, man.
The tagline: an intergalactic dog pilot from Sirius the Dog Star visits Earth to verify rumors that dogs have failed to take over the planet.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Hey, what about? Oh, sorry.
A Boy and His
Technically,
Dog.
it's like a sequel of Starlight Barking, because Starlight Barking is that the dogs at the end, spoiler alert, decide to stay on planet Earth and remain companions with humans, and they let the dog go back to the dog star. But so the Good Boy movie kind of takes place in the future where, okay, he's going to come back, and it's like, you guys stayed behind. What did you do with all that time? And they're still just being dogs, and they've kind of forgot this entire event, that they were able to telepathically communicate and control technology. Like, all this goes out, and that's what Good Boy kind of takes up the slack.
Beach Countryside Mongoose says Kubrick's daughter doesn't believe he made the fake moon landing film, but doesn't Kubrick's daughter also believe that Thetans control her inner consciousness and that Xenu was responsible for all of us?
Ever since she got punched in the spine at that demonstration at was it Dealey Plaza, she's been kind of different. But yeah, man, I just want to say, like, Sirius, the dog Sirius, that was the only dog that died in the Two Towers on 9/11, the police dog. He was number 17. It's the 17th arcana is the star card in tarot. And like, dude, you know what I'm talking about? Sirius, the police dog on 9/11.
I didn't know about this. No.
Oh yeah, and they performed this whole ceremony that was like all they did like a ritual for freaking Sirius. Look this up, dude. It's fucking weird as hell. But yeah, so
was he at the Twin Towers?
Yeah, he was in. I believe he was in the buildings. He was helping people. He was a hero dog.
So have you guys ever heard of the movie A Boy and His Dog before?
Yeah, of course. I watched it recently. Rewatched it.
Boy and His Blob was, I think, a spin-off of that in a way. I wanted to ask you really quick. Have you ever done like a breakdown of like finding a different one of the major arcana in 9/11? Like, we've got Sirius, you've got the tower. Like, has anyone actually plotted out like, here's what all the different symbols are?
Jason Barrera, David.
What about the cat from outer space? Because Disney made that movie instead, and it's like, it's kind of, you got to think about the timeline. Disney's thinking they're going to build the ultimate America. What Enterprises is going to make the moon landing instead of fake the moon landing, and then they end up in a world where dogs don't run things. It's actually run by cats, and the cats are lazy, troublesome things that are not that intelligent, but they've evolved to have these cyborg collars that give them hyper intelligence and telepathy. And then also, there's a lot of cocaine in this movie, and this weird sex scene that happens where like she lands in his lap. You know what I'm talking about? That part right there. She's like, it's like right about here. She's gonna like fall.
That's like a rabbit moment.
Yeah, it's just like it's this weird uncomfortable thing where she like jumps out of the plane. Here it is. It's like right up here. Come on, jump in the plane. There it is, right here. She lands first the cat, then she gets down into his lap. The pussycat scene. Here she comes. Cool outfit. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of that. Oh, there it is. There it is. When she went there, you can even see it.
That
right
smile that she had a second later. Yeah, she's like, "Oh, that's nice."
Boom.
Oh,
bounce. Yeah, very interesting Disney moment in the cat from outer space. I don't know what it means, but if you think about Kubrick and sexuality, there's definitely something to it.
Chaos Walking. Have you ever heard of Chaos Walking?
No.
Look up that movie real quick, because that movie is basically just an amalgamation of all of that. Instead of all of the dudes' thoughts can be heard by women. So they have to and then they have like a psychic link with their dogs. They can hear what.
Is this like a Son of Sam thing that we're going towards?
This is a 2021 version of A Boy and His Dog, basically.
Are you supposed to watch this with the Summer of Sam? No, sorry, that's stupid.
That's the dude who plays Spider-Man on the bottom. What's his name? Tom Holland or whatnot?
This is almost like the inverse of What Women Want with Mel Gibson, where we're like,
they don't want to hear what a guy has to say. It's you can see his dog there. Like
I thought that was just his answering, like his recorded phone call. Mel Gibson's recorded phone call. Wasn't that What Women Want? Sorry, I thought that was the movie. Excuse me.
I like those pants. I want those. Those look cool.
Of course you do.
It's not a bad movie. I
It's like
mean,
Rebel Lions
especially
shit.
for pandemic times. But
I'm getting Scientology vibes just from the screenshots.
Yeah, that's
For
probably what
sure.
I'm into. I'm like, oh, that looks good. I wish that, you know what? Why doesn't Scientology take over Star Wars? Like they do so well with NCIS. Like, why can't they do like?
Right.
because I really think that, dude, I hate to be paranoid, but it's almost like Disney is trying to destroy culture. Like,
Morgan, didn't I send you to watch the Bored Ape Yacht thing that I've referenced once already tonight?
no, I don't think
Okay,
so.
I'm
I
gonna
thought
tell
I
you
was
to do it
supposed I
again.
I
So
thought that
here's the
you and
deal.
I were supposed to be watching I Heart Hucklebees, and I
We
cannot.
we should be
find that.
doing that. Actually, we should be reviewing that at some point.
Yeah.
Although I'm on like some
We
weird.
should be
mission.
doing it right after this show, but I don't have that ready yet.
Like, didn't I send you this video and I just looked? The video's like 8.5 hours long, and I'm not even exaggerating.
Okay, so here's the 1 hour
It's the Golden
47
Bough.
minute version. Here's the clip version. Everyone needs to watch this video. I feel like I haven't
Oh,
been
yeah.
jealous of a video in a long time, but this is like a video where I wish I had done the work and figured this out because I knew half of it,
Oh,
but I
just
didn't
don't
bother
know,
to do
man.
the
Like,
deep dive.
that seems like that's a lot of work, bro. That's
Oh yeah,
somebody
no,
who
this is
does
crazy
not
amounts
have
of
a
work, but
job,
like,
bro.
trust me, I'm tied into it. So the deal is basically the NFTs were designed to look like stupid apes, and you're
Racist
thinking,
trope.
okay, that's a dumb waste of money. So it's not for you; it's for dumb. It's for us, by us, kind of a thing. And so you're like, wait, is that racist? Then are they saying it's like apes? And then there's like, well, actually, it seems like there's a lot of like neo-Nazi like symbology and alt-right symbology. So are they neo-Nazis? But then you've got
Intentional.
Turks, Pakistanis, Jews, Cubans that are all working on this thing. So is it really racism? And then you realize actually Yuga Labs is doing something far deeper than some alt-right thing. What they're doing is they're taking common symbolism to the plebeian that like they're afraid of, that is charged already with energy, and they're inverting it in front of them. They're inverting it in a way that there's 3 levels of synchronicity. Like, so you have synchromystical works that are hidden, and on the top level, the surface level, you have a plebeian symbol that is just a simple monkey with like it's just trying to make it seem innocuous. So you've got this innocuous thing that is accepted, and then from there, the ape hand, right, like connected to major atrocities like the trading of the hands in the Congo, all these weird symbols that they're putting into the thing.
Yeah.
So what it's doing is you're charging it, so these symbols are now worth $1 million, and they're filled with love and carelessness, which is inverting the entire idea of the symbology. And then by the time of 2022, 2024 now, like, first they actually, like, you got to see what they do in terms of cryptology. I don't want to ruin it for you. There's spoilers here.
Bro,
But-
it's like down to their names. Like,
Right.
they're really, you have to Easter egg hunt to figure out what the fuck is
It's
going
all
on.
here. It's all here. You watch this
My
video,
character is
you'll
from
get it all.
Gorillas.
Not only that, in this video, watch the Asmongold version because he's reacting to the video, and then the dude calls and they have an interview that clears up some of the things I feel like were left out of his official video, because as he looks into it, he's like, yeah, they can't just be like incel fascists because they're too educated. And I think it's actually true. They're like,
Right.
these people understand how to invert Wilhelm Reichian symbols of fascism due to the suppression of sexuality which exists in this country, in this world, right? And they
Mhm.
figured out
using it
how.
to
So
their
that the
own
point of this,
benefit.
I think, really was so that you can't just call someone a Nazi anymore. The idea is to invert the power of the symbols until they lost their charge. And it's really been effective as far as I can tell, because I had no idea what Bored Ape was doing other than just like screwing people out of money. But it makes a lot of sense that you would, get $1 billion from the government, get $4 or $5 billion from idiots that are buying into Ponzi schemes, get celebrity endorsements behind it, and then study those people, see if you can find anything more valuable than their money. Maybe like get them into cryptology, right? Who's interested in
It seems
cryptology?
like some shit that we would try that wouldn't work, bro. Like,
Well, you just need to get
What do
Post
you mean
Malone to
we,
buy one of our
Kemosabe?
NFTs and we're good.
what you mean? Like, okay, well, I would try and it wouldn't work.
You want 5D chess dog whistles, as somebody in the comments called it?
I mean, that's what like sync is, right? Sync is basically just us looking for like sacred dog whistles. Like,
This
I
is a
don't know.
serious
Like,
thing.
my whole focus for like the last couple of years is to be some sort of writer of a script that incorporates conscious sync into the, you have a group of actors, you know what those actors syncs are, will then just write the script according to those actors. You get what I'm saying? And of course, you're talking about D-list actors. You're not talking about like Brad Pitt and shit like that.
You're talking about all of them. It's a whole
I'm talking about Andras Jones, man. Hey, this is something that I'd like to leave you guys with. If you don't know who Andras Jones is and you're interested in sync work, then you need to know what Radio 8 Ball is. Andras Jones is an actor who has been the host of Radio 8 Ball for at least a decade, if not a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades, maybe longer, maybe since the 90s for all I know. But anyways, it has to do with the idea that you get a group of individuals into a room together and you have them write down questions on a piece of paper. They get called up at random. They ask their question. They spin a wheel. The wheel gives them a number. The band who is on stage plays that song number. And then that song number is supposed to be interpreted by everybody who is in the crowd as the answer to that question. Right. However, recently, he did it at the Dream conference, like the International Dream Conference that happens every year. And because Andras Jones is an actor, I've studied his sync web. It wasn't intentional. He's not like been in a great amount of movies, but what's interesting about him is that his dad was a dream psychiatrist, one of the biggest at the time in the US, and helped fund the Evergreen College in Washington State. Now, he used to run these dream conferences where individuals would get on stage and they would say a dream, and then everybody in the audience would get this kind of like opportunity to step up to the mic and interpret the dream as if the dream was their dream. It was supposed to be very rich because what it did was break down it breaks down how many different ways you can interpret a symbol depending on point of view. But the reason why Andras is important is because he basically does the same thing in his synchronicity show. So then someone from the Dream Interpretation Conference hooked him up. And man, I watched that shit. That was amazing. It was amazing because the individuals who were into dreams understood the assignment of how to loosely connect the connections like that, because that's what dreams are.
Sure.
And then the reason that Andras is important is because he shows what it has to do with movies. Most of the individuals that he has had on Radio 8 Ball have been actors that he's known, including like Viggo Mortensen, what's his name? Seth Green, a lot of big individuals that you guys would like. But anyways, it was very interesting seeing that like alchemical mixture of synchronicity mixed with dream work, because basically that's what movies are, right? Movies are basically just like collective dreams. Does anybody disagree with that? Well, the thing is how do we like lucid dream?
I might disagree with that a little bit, just because a movie can't necessarily be collective, just because a movie then will cause you to have dreams. So then it would become a complete feedback loop, like an infinite feedback loop.
I think like horror films, like Rob Zombie's horror films, and a lot of particular like Hellraiser, like the later Hellraisers even more, but all of them, the idea of making a trap box, like a mental box that your audience is put into, that allows them to have emotional, like there's an emotional, spiritual reality of sensorial reality that is replacing your physical senses with your imaginary senses. And a lot of the times, like, you're trapped in the slaughterhouse, you're trapped in this metal room, I feel like there is kind of the there is something about like creating a space that the same audience goes to and puts their fear and their emotions into, which charges up that symbol, charges up that like movie, charges up that director.
Well, I would actually, I guess, caveat that with it. Once you go to an actual movie theater, that makes a lot more sense. I think even Jay Widener has like a whole thing about how a movie theater is kind of like a tomb, or it's like a coffin that you go inside this tomb and you sit there and you experience a whole new reality, and then you like go back out into the world and like the light blinds you, and that you essentially died and came back to life, and that while you're dead, you're watching that movie. In that case, yeah, everyone in that theater just shared like a collective like a death rebirth experience.
There's a pretty good book on like the Ignatian method in cinema, which I'll find for you, which talks a lot about like Jesuits in film and the idea of the stage and, you know, kind of emptying out all the other senses. But I would also say that the video cassette, like post pornography into horror genre world, created an entire new kind of film that wasn't really available in the, you know, like the slaughterhouse films in the 70s. Even like it took the 80s and 90s to have it that you could be alone, like a woman could be alone watching a cassette tape of the Cenobites, right? Like that is a new reality.
Well, if you look in the original Hellraiser, they make a whole point that they come out of the TV to begin with. She got the TV in the hospital room, and the way they go back and forth between the TV and the cube is pretty, it's not so subtle, you know.
Right. Even the Ring, right? The idea that Ring is kind of commenting on, hey, you've started to believe that it's always safe, right? And so here's a scene of this girl climbing through the television, which
right, and that's
was
meta.
Really powerful.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, that's related to Freud's uncanny, that like the actual coming out of the TV thing. It's kind of similar, actually, in a weird way, to the monolith being the shape of the screen itself, you know, in 2001.
Right.
Which is a kind of not Kenneth Anger. What's his name? Rob Agger. I think he wasn't the first to present that theory, though. I actually think Jay Weidner was, like, before he even did that documentary on 2001. But I think Rob Agger popularized it. Whatever.
So stupendous in every way, he's just tremendous. With a smile that's
you guys are gonna want to check out Meta Egg.
Hit that live tab, bro. We have been blowing up on live lately. And hit that one right there and look at the comments. Look at the first comment. Where are the comments? There it is. Haha, yeah.
And get your local favorite paranoid comic book, Paranoid American. Not Illuminati. That's not for us. If you keep going down, there's the one that's for us. That's the NASA comic, which I actually got some great news that I just talked to my printer. I'm supposed to get the Chosen One and the Illuminati printed by the 19th. And as soon as I get those shipped out, then I can launch this. I'm not allowed to launch it from Kickstarter until I finish all the vegetables on my plate. So the 19th is the first big milestone when the countdown starts to tick down for actually being able to launch this thing. It's ready. It's like ready to go. I'm getting like a custom little Apollo 11 patch made. It's going to be, I'll have to share more when we actually get closer to it. But if you go to this page, click that little green notify me on launch. And if you do that and you actually get a comic, you'll also end up getting a little limited edition Kubrick directing the Beatles in Lord of the Rings to bring us back to the full.
Nice. All right. I got go. You got it in highlights on my Twitter or X or whatever. I think at this point, I have over 100 sync films here. For, you know, can you download them from this site? I don't even know. I don't even know if I've tried. But and then also, if you scroll up, is this Andreas? You can go to thesyncbook.com /sync media research, and you'll see over 200 sync films for free streaming and download. So there you have it.
Step right up. I know I've asked you this before, and is it on your list yet? Spaceballs sync.
Spaceballs. I've never experimented with Spaceballs, and you know, there's certain movies that they're just like the dialogue is such that, you know. But if I came across something and I was like, oh shit, this National Lampoon's album came out the same day and year as,
right,
you know, then I might do something. But no, I've never tried.
When did Spaceballs come out?
That's a good question. 80s, 1980. I don't know. I would guess.
I don't know, I
Spaceballs
might be
is the
early.
reason why I never liked Star Wars. Because
1987.
I saw Spaceballs first, and then I saw Star Wars, and I was like, "This is a crappy knockoff of Spaceballs."
That's exactly what my wife said about The Last Jedi.
Wow. She said it's a knockoff of Spaceballs, or is it?
Yes. Halfway through the film, she was like, "This isn't Star Wars. This is Spaceballs," and has never been interested in anything since. I mean, my wife and I had Star Wars in common. My daughter's name is Leia.
I said, bring only what you need to survive. It's my industrial strength hairdryer, and I can't live without it. Yeah, there's a million lines. We've gone to plaid. Yeah.
87 June.
How long is this song?
This is a more.